Or will it all come crashing down when the policy chickens come home to roost? On Cross Question, former Conservative Cabinet Minister Dame Theresa Villas, fine jeweller Kiki McDonough, former Corbyn advisor James Schneider, and transport journalist and author Christian Wolmar. And at 9, should technical education be seen as on a par with university degrees?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, it's 7 o'clock. Some households on universal credit will be able to get more support if their child takes on a paid apprenticeship. The government is worried that teenagers are being put off from applying because their family could lose their benefits. It's part of a series of measures to cut youth unemployment, which also includes allowing students to pick up technical subjects from 14. Speaking in Derby this morning, Andy Burnham said the change is long overdue.
I cannot accept the situation where we have so many young people in their 20s on benefits. It's just not right for them. And why do we have that? The support just isn't there. You know, it would be wrong to blame the young people when we have an education system that doesn't set them up properly, where some struggle to find opportunities at 16, where work experience and work placements aren't there for them. We've got to put those building blocks in place.
The Conservatives say Labour has made it too expensive for many businesses to hire young people. Several people are reported to have died in an explosion at a shopping centre in Japan. It happened after the country was hit by a 6.8 magnitude earthquake, which has also caused power outages and roads to buckle. Ryota Mimaki felt the quake in the city of Kumamoto.
The initial shock was, I think, about 2 minutes or something, and it was quite big. I've never experienced that big earthquake, so I was not being able to stand still, so I was in holding rail or something.
Police say a 7-year-old boy from London is still in a critical condition after 6 members of the same family got into difficulty in the sea off Essex. His 15-year-old cousin and her mother died in West Mersey last Wednesday. Speedboat killer Jack Shepherd has admitted assaulting his current girlfriend and attacking her with a set of barbecue tongs. The 38-year-old was recalled to prison over 2 assaults in February and June last year. He was previously jailed in 2018 over the death of Charlotte Brown, who was thrown from his speedboat during their first date. And European football's governing bodies hit out at FIFA's plans to set up a private company to run its competitions like the World Cup. UEFA says the sport's soul and governance aren't assets to trade, especially with zero transparency as to who will gain financially. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 89 points at 10,871. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. LBC weather, showers across much of the north tonight. Further south, it'll be mainly dry and clear with some drizzle reaching some western areas later, a low of 10. Showers clearing southern and eastern areas tomorrow, otherwise hot and sunny with the odd shower in the far west, a high of 35 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 4 minutes past 7 on LBC. I'm Iain Dale here with you until 10. Don't forget you can watch the whole show, because we're so good to you, on Global Player, on the LBC app or the LBC YouTube channel, not just Cross Question, the whole 3 hours. Now, Andy Burnham has been Prime Minister for 8 years, so you might think it's a little early to rush to judgment on how he's doing. But first impressions count, don't they? I remember Ian Duncan Smith back in about, 2004, 2005, saying that he reckoned that a political party leader has 90 days to allow people to make their minds up about them. 90 days in 2003, I would suggest is probably about 10 days now. I think a lot of people have made up their minds about Andy Burnham, both positively and negatively, after only 8 days. So that's really what I want to ask you this hour. How do you think he's doing? What are your first impressions of Andy Burnham as Prime Minister? Are they different to what you thought he might be like? What do you think he's done well? What do you think he hasn't done well? I'm going to give him a little bit of a scorecard. I think on communications, I think he scores a B+. I'm slightly irritated by some of his social media videos, but he's doing something a bit different, and I think that's good. I think on the speed of policy announcements, he gets a B+. In terms of actual the meat of them, I think the jury is out on that. I wouldn't give him as much as a B+, I have to say. His ministerial appointments, I think probably a B. I think he's going to live to regret getting rid of the entire Starmer Praetorian Guard. I think he's essentially created trouble for himself on the backbenches in the long term. But you look at some of the announcements that he's made, and there is a bit of a thread to them. There is a little bit of a narrative, and that was something that everybody complained that Keir Starmer just didn't have. And I think the narrative is to do something for what he would term the working classes. Now, you can ridicule the VAT cut on energy if you like. It amounts to 90 pence a week. But it's something, isn't it? You can ridicule the announcement about extra money off taxes for pubs. He says he's doing that because they are part of our working class culture. But there are quite a few other things. I mean, the technical education announcement that he's made today, which we're going to be talking about at 7:35 with the Lib Dem education spokesperson, Munira Wilson, and then talking about that after 10. I mean, again, something that I think a lot of people is going to resonate with a lot of people, where he says, why do some people in this country still look down their noses at so-called working class jobs? Shouldn't be that way. He's absolutely right on that. So how would you score him? Do you have some positive first impressions? I think on the communications front, he's a breath of fresh air compared to Keir Starmer. But I wonder sometimes, is he trying too hard to be a people pleaser? Is he trying a little bit too hard to be popular? There's nothing wrong with a politician wanting to be popular, is there? Well, Bethany Dawson is LBC's political correspondent, and she joins us now. Bethany, it's interesting to look at 2 or 3 of the polls that have come out in the last few days, and they make quite positive reading for the new Prime Minister.
They do. We've heard a lot about the Burnham bounce that Labour hope to get, some improvement in the polls, and they do seem like they're starting to get it. We've had 2 polls now where Andy Burnham, or rather where Labour leads reform. That is not something we've seen for quite a while now. And there was a really interesting poll from YouGov today, which found that people think Andy Burnham would be a better Prime Minister than Nigel Farage. 40% of people would pick Andy Burnham over Farage, 22% would pick Farage, 38% would prefer him over Kemi Badenoch, 26% would support Kemi Badenoch. So you can see that he is popular, but as you said, it has only been 8 days. And if you look back to this point in the Keir Starmer administration, he was pretty popular for a little while, for a few weeks. And then you saw it drop just after the general election. 44% had a favourable view of Keir Starmer. That went down to 35 in just 2 months. So this honeymoon period that we're talking about, it doesn't really seem that any politician seems to have much time anymore. As you said, probably not even 90 days. And that might be why Andy Burnham has moved so quickly to produce so many policies. I mean, in those 8 days that he's been Prime Minister, there have been 7 announcements, or 7 sort of moves. He, as you said, cut VAT on energy bills. He's lowered the price cap. He's introduced a new educational template. He said he wanted to end rough sleeping. He's opened Number 10 North. He's cut business rates on pubs, clubs and smaller music venues. And he's met with Volodymyr Zelensky. So he's done a lot. And as you say, you know, it might be because he just doesn't have much time to have any wiggle room, but it also might be because there was so much criticism of Keir Starmer not doing much or making a speech and then commissioning a review, and then everyone has to wait years for any movement. He is showing that he can just get some stuff done.
And he also appears to believe what he's doing. With Keir Starmer, there's always a slight robotic effect about him, but Andy Burnham seems to feel it from his heart, or am I being a bit slushy?
There's something that I think is really interesting about Andy Burnham, and I don't mean this to sound rude. I really don't mean it offensively. He's not the most fluent speaker. He ums and ahs quite a lot. I mean, I do too. Hold my hands up. There we go. An example of it. But he sounds like a normal person talking. And a lot of politicians, including some very good ones, are so fluent that it almost sounds rehearsed when they're talking about things they believe in. But Andy Burnham does kind of sound like a normal guy talking about things that he likes. Now, that might completely be the idea. He very much has built a character that he is a normal guy. He's the bloke down the pub and you just want him to go and sort everything out, you know. But he does seem incredibly passionate and, as you say, has successfully sort of drawn a narrative with his policy announcements, a lot of them focusing on the cost of living, almost all of them focusing on normal people. And even you can see his cabinet starting to do this. I wrote yesterday that Yvette Cooper, the new health secretary, is launching DHSC North. Now, that's actually just a renaming of offices that have existed in Leeds for a long time. But the idea is so that the Department for Health can show that they are focusing on communities in the north of England and indeed in smaller parts of England, not just big cities and towns. So you can see that they are really drawing a narrative that they are helping people that feel as though they've been forgotten by those in Whitehall.
Well, as I always say, what about people in the southwest? What about people in the northeast? I mean, if everything is going to be concentrated on what he terms the north, and Manchester, if you're in Newcastle, is not the north, Newcastle is the north, I think that is storing up trouble for him. I really do.
And I think one thing that is interesting is the visits that Andy Burnham has been on and where he's made these policy announcements this week. He went, of course, up to Manchester to open number 10 North, but he was also in Portsmouth. He was also in Bath. You know, he has been going across the country trying, and it's quite obvious.
I think you mean Bath.
Bath. I'm very sorry to our listeners.
No, you didn't get the joke. Never mind. That's how Andy Burnham would pronounce it.
If I start talking how Andy Burnham talks, I think we'll get some very upset texters in.
I think they'd find it entertaining.
I can't do a Manchester. I actually got told off over the weekend for trying. It didn't sound very good. But he's very clearly trying to show that he is not just a Manchester guy. He loves Manchester. He's put a number 10 base there. He's not kind of leaving those roots behind, but he is very clearly trying to show, practice what he preaches, right? A decentralisation of power rather than just like a second centralised base.
Thank you very much, Bethany. I did say I was going to ask you to give ratings, but obviously you're completely impartial, so you'd have to give him a C+ average, wouldn't you?
Everyone gets a C.
Yeah. Right. Peter Kellner can give him some marks, though. He is a political commentator, former president of YouGov. Peter, very good evening. Now, you've been writing today in the New Statesman that you think the Burnham bounce might be a little bit short-lived. Why?
I'm not saying it will be. I'm just saying it's too early to say that it will last. We've had 2 more polls out today. So if you take the 4 polls we had yesterday and today, we've got 2 of them showing Labour and Reform tied. That's YouGov and Delta poll. And we've got 2 of them showing Labour narrowly ahead. That's More in Common and Salvation. So look, the parties are close together. Individual polls are subject to margins of error, but clearly Reform is toppling on or from its perch. But, you know, we've had a week when Andy Burnham has had a lot of very favourable publicity. He's used it extremely well. If in 2 or 3 months' time, and perhaps you can play this back to me then, if Labour is 5 or 10 points ahead, then I will willingly say, yes, there is a bounce that's lasted. But we'll wait and see. I'm not sure yet that it will be a bounce that lasts.
Because you really can tell a Prime Minister's mettle when they have to make the really difficult decisions. And that often is through events that they cannot have predicted when they came into office. So, look, I think he certainly had a better start in some ways than Keir Starmer did after the election. I can't remember how long it was before the suits and glasses thing blew up, but it wasn't that long after, was it? And let's hope he doesn't suffer something like that.
You're right, but can I say the other side of that coin, and a large part of my piece for the New Statesman, which I encourage your listeners to read, is about what's happened to Reform, because Nigel Farage's ratings have gone down a long way, and the latest polling for Delta poll, for example, shows him badly negative. So I think the gloss is off Reform, and given that it was Reform's surge last year that sent both Labour and the Conservatives down below 20%. I think the fact that Reform are down to the mid or possibly even the low 20s in terms of percentage, I think is significant news. Looking at the latest polls, I'm struck by the fact that both Labour and the Conservatives are up a few points on where they were 6 or 9 months ago. I remember writing a blog on my Substack, I think about 6 months ago, pointing out that Labour and the Conservatives were together, combined, below 40%. They were sort of 18, 19%, the two of them. They're now both above 20%. And one of the polls, I'm looking at my charts now, more in common. If you add together Labour 28, Conservative 20, they're on 50%. Perhaps we're seeing the beginning of a return of the old two-party battle. But Labour's rise under Andy Burnham is the flip side of the decline of reform.
And also, the Greens, I think, have declined quite a bit in the last few months, whereas Zach Polanski got a huge fillip when he first became Green Party leader, but you don't really hear much from him nowadays. And their poll rating has gone down from, 15 to 18% to way below that.
That's right, and of course the controversy in the last 24 hours about him, his ex or tweet, hasn't helped him. But looking at the figures, the 4 polls we've had over the last few days, 2 are on 10%, 1 on 8, 1 on 13. The average around 10%, and it was around 15% shortly after he became leader. So I think the shine has gone off Polanski quite seriously, and Andy Burnham's arrival has contributed to that.
So you're Andy Burnham's headmaster. What grade do you give him for his first 8 days?
Oh, my goodness, Ian. That's very hard. I mean, I tell you why it's hard. Take the big announcement today on technical education. He's, the 5th Prime Minister in succession, I think, who's on a big speech about the importance of technical education and making it equal to academic education. But none of the other 4 delivered. If he delivers on that, it's an A. If it's just words and he fails to deliver, then it's a C. At the moment, I can't tell whether it's an A or a C.
Well, look, I mean, he's only been there 8 days. It's probably unfair to rush to a judgment on him, but he certainly talks the talk. But I think what you're saying is, let's see if he walks the walk. Very sensible advice. Peter Kellner, thank you very much indeed. Peter is a political commentator, former president of YouGov. So we'll come to your calls in a moment. How do you judge, I nearly said Keir Starmer, how do you judge Andy Burnham's first 8 days in power? I know it's too early to come to a definitive judgment, but do you like what you see more than you thought you might? Or the opposite? 17 minutes past 7.
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m.
Andy Burnham says 14-year-olds will be allowed to pursue a more vocational education. He wants to make a hard hat just as respected as a graduation cap. But won't this be a disaster for social mobility and for aspiration? And therefore, isn't this plan from our new Prime Minister a pretty terrible one? Your calls on it all from 10 o'clock.
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Pick up more sun cream. Impromptu picnic. Late night cinema trip? Do more this summer. Hop on and off with the Weekend Hopper. Get unlimited weekend bus and tram journeys for £1.75 per day every Saturday and Sunday from the 25th of July. Plan your journey with the TfL Go app. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Offer valid from 4:30 a.m. on the 25th of July until 23:59 Monday the 31st of August. Always use the same card or device when touching in. For more information, search TfL Hopper.
Honestly, I've been putting MTD off. First it was, I'll do it after this job. Then, after some grouting. After sorting the back of the van. After fish fingers and peas. And then I thought, no, just get it done.
Get MTD done simply with Sage for free. Just connect to your bank, we'll sort your transactions, then submit your update to HMRC. Search Sage MTD.
Ever notice how some things are just standard? Traffic on the M4, standard. Meetings that could have been an email, standard. But at Aon, our cars are driving the new standard. The new Aon V has rapid charging, standard. Panoramic glass roof, standard. 8 years servicing, 8 years MOT, 8 years roadside assistance, and up to 8 years warranty. Also standard, thanks to our Great 8 promise. Search Aon Auto to test drive today. T's and C's apply.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
20 past 7 on LBC. It's Iain Dale with you until 10. We're talking about Andy Burnham for a change. It actually makes a nice change not to talk about Donald Trump every day, doesn't it? I'm sure that period of our lives will return at some point. But how do you think Andy Burnham is doing in his first 8 days as Prime Minister? He has been quite hyperactive. No one can say that he didn't have a few policies up his sleeve to announce. Now, you can argue and say, yeah, but they're not really that important, are they? They're not costing a lot of money. Some of them are neither here nor there. They're a bit performative. They're all designed to be popular. Well, there's nothing wrong with a policy being popular. Sometimes you do have to introduce unpopular policies, and that will be the test of Andy Burnham when he has to do that. And I don't know what will trigger that, but there is no Prime Minister in our history that has ever gone through a term of office without having to make unpopular decisions. Sometimes you can turn that into a strength. Keir Starmer was never able to do that. He kept boasting about taking the tough decisions. Still can't do him, can I? And it'll be very interesting to see how Andy Burnham copes with that kind of scenario. Right, how do you think he's doing, Paul, in Stoke Mandeville? Hello, Paul.
Hi, Ian.
What would you like to tell us about your views on Andy Burnham?
I think you captured a lot of my thoughts just there about there's a lot of headlines being put out there with not much behind it. There's a lot of party tricks. This whole opening new branches at number 10, that was a complete waste of time and effort, I think. And I don't think he can make it really, really mean anything. I don't think it's sustainable. The only thing he's done so far that I think is actually any good is the thing about the 14-year-olds today. I mean, I was that 14-year-old back many moons ago, and I absolutely should have been allowed to go in a different direction instead of being forced to go through exams I was never going to pass and didn't pass. So I think that's a really good thing. How he makes it work, though, I don't know, and I'm not sure he does really. But it sounded good, didn't it? So that's the important thing.
Well, it is important to sound good in many ways. I think any politician would want to sound good. Keir Starmer never quite carried it off. But do you think all of this stuff about the technical education, which we're going to talk a lot more about after 9 o'clock, but I was slightly, how can I put this? I was slightly surprised at my colleague Ben Kentish's programme trail there, where he's seems to be totally opposed to what Andy Burnham is doing on the basis that it will ruin aspiration, it will ruin social mobility. I don't really agree with that at all. I think Andy Burnham is onto something here, because I think there are far too many people in this country who look down their noses at people who do what they think or what they class as menial jobs. And they shouldn't do that, because every job is important in the economy, whether it's well paid or not, whether it requires sort of brain more than brawn or brawn more than brain.
It provides options and pathways for children that will not succeed in the way Tony Blair wants them to. 50% going to university, which has always been nonsense, and now the jobs aren't there for them. The jobs are where we're screaming out. I'm in construction, getting hammered left, right, and centre by a Labour government. Thank you very much. There are just about still the jobs. The market's dying a bit, but I can't get apprentices. I can't get kids that are willing to work. And one of the biggest problems we do have, which he's obviously identified, is young unemployed people, the NEETs as they call them. It's a massive issue. So if he can fix that, fair play to him.
Well, I'll tell you one thing he can do. I was watching a clip from Tom Swarbrick's programme, I think it was from yesterday, where a chap took his teenage son to a job centre, and the job centre wouldn't give him any advice on anything because he wasn't on benefits.
How have we got to this point?
Well, that was exactly the thought that went through my head. I mean, you have one job. You're in a job centre. You are there to serve the general public, not just people who happen to be on benefits. There are plenty of people who don't claim benefits who are looking for work, and they deserve to be appreciated as well.
And I do think as well he needs to. He's locked his way into this job, and he hasn't really spoken to us yet. He's walked in and he's talking to himself in the mirror a lot and talking to the cabinet, but he doesn't seem to be addressing us. When is he going to? I don't listen to anything Gary Lineker has to say, and Laura Kunsberg doesn't really do it for me either. So I haven't yet been spoken to by Andy in any way. When is he going to address us actually and set out some sort of platform? I mean, he must have one. He must have thought about it. He didn't have much time, not as much time as he wanted, but he's had enough time to formulate some proper policy and thought and a direction, hasn't he? When are we going to hear it?
Well, he did the speech outside Number 10 when he first became Prime Minister. That gave a bit of a direction of travel, didn't it?
It was nothing. It was just, again, just a few headlines. We need to understand them. Usually these people have to stand in front of the electorate and talk to us some months ahead of getting this job. And he hasn't had to do that, and we don't know enough.
Well, I suspect we will very soon, because if it is true that he can't answer the question, where's the beef, where are the policy details, he can't just suddenly say, oh, well, I'm standing behind the Labour Party manifesto from the last election. That isn't going to cut it, because then people say, yeah, but the previous guy was doing that as well. So what's different about you? And fine, you've announced these relatively minor new policies, but made a great song and dance, and the media have lapped it up because there's nothing else to talk about at the moment. Then I think that is when we will see whether he's the real deal or not. Paul, thank you very much. Shahid is in Hemel Hempstead. Shahid, hi.
Yeah, hi. I think he's made some big mistakes already. The way I see it, he's continued Keir Starmer's and Rachel Reeves' original mistake of tying their hands on tax. Now, I remember the 2024 election quite well. If the British public wanted a continuation of those substandard public services and anemic growth, they would have kept those Tories in. But Keir Starmer, misguidedly advised by Pat McFadden and Morgan McSweeney and Mandelson, they went with no, treat it like 1992, you don't want to mess it up at the last minute. I thought, what a load of rubbish. We keep on having prime ministers after prime ministers. They've got two things on their agenda. Ambition, ticking that box, I want to be Prime Minister and, I'll fulfil my career regardless of what happens, and I'll get to enjoy all the fruits and memoirs and all that kind of stuff. And then B, calculate their way into office. How do we tell the public what they want to hear rather than what's needed? And the way I see it, if Prime Ministers, regardless of their political colours, are not prepared to tell the public what's needed to be done, especially in terms of raising revenue to improve public services, forget about it. And I've spoken to you ever since you first joined LBC.
You have.
Over the years, you dismissed it as political protest. I don't see it like that. The Labour Party have been around for 125, 26 years. They are always hopefully going to be around as a proper party for the working people. And then you've got the Keir Starmers of this world always want to drag it towards some sort of Tory light. I'm just thinking, how's he going to, improve defence, housing, social care on the same Tory spending policies? It's not possible. The only wiggle room he's got is if he does what the Europeans do, and apparently what they do, they don't put infrastructure spending as part of the national debt. Apparently the bond markets are okay with that. As long as they get told how you're going to pay it back over what time frame, they'll accept it. But unless he does that, I think, and with John Healey, he was sounded like another, Rachel Reeves. You've got to say, we've got to be very careful on this and we'll be very careful on that. I'm just thinking, come their first budget, it's going to have the same situation and take the shackles off. And if you're too scared to do it, forget about it. People just keep on putting the Tories in. There's no point putting Labour in if you don't want a Labour government. And Labour, stop being Tory-like, be Labour for goodness sake. The other thing that he's doing wrong, he's playing to the galleries. He's reacting to the Tory media, what they want to hear. And, I'm thinking, I know what he's doing. He's trying to be all things to all people. A, he'll come a cropper on the spending. B, I think he should, if he really believes in it, fine. But I'm not impressed with, reactionary prime ministers, whatever the media start, making a fuss about. I say I'll do that. No. You do what you want as long as it improves the country, not what the media want.
But it's not going to improve the country if he brings the economy crashing down by imposing unrealistic spending plans.
I don't buy it. Like, the Europeans have 5% more tax on average than us. And they're struggling. I think the reason why they're struggling is because Macron and Germany, they went too hard on us on Brexit, and they messed themselves up. They shot themselves in the foot. Everyone blames Farage and whoever else voted for Brexit, but they don't think about, hold on, was it Macron and co? And who was that geezer in charge of I've forgotten his name. The main negotiator,
Barnier.
He was far too strict with us. They've all messed themselves up trying to teach us a lesson about Brexit. But I just think if you borrow to invest, if you we've got the taxes when the economy was booming. Ever since the banking crash, the public services have been struggling. Everyone's struggling. We need affordable housing. We need to correct, the original problems that got us into that banking crash in the first place, which was overpriced housing and low interest rates. They know what needs to be done. They just haven't got the guts to do it because they'd rather be in political office and just give tiny little scraps and hope to win power. Forget that nonsense. Like Farage, if he gets in, he's going to be a flash in the pan because whatever he's promised, especially to working classes, they might enjoy ethnic minorities getting deported, and I do think they'll try to deport me and other British-born people. But what are they going to do when there's no doctors to treat them when they're having a heart attack or in a major car crash or their loved ones are, anything like that, and the public services get worse, People need to think ahead and really think about what they want and just vote accordingly. But let's not pretend that they can improve things on the status quo, because the proof is there. For the last, near 20 years, nothing is improving.
Well, I wouldn't say nothing is improving. There are all sorts of problems in our economy. There are all sorts of problems with different public services. But I think it's a bit of an exaggeration to say nothing is improving. But as I say it, I'm not sure I can think of a lot that is. Right, we'll take more of your calls in a moment, and we'll talk more about Andy Burnham's plans for secondary schools in England. He's saying they have to offer manual trades and technical skills for 14 to 16-year-olds as part of a drive to reduce the number of jobless young people. But first, let's get the news headlines on LBC at 7:30. Here's Amelia Cox.
Households on universal credit are due to receive more money to help teenagers take on apprenticeships. Ministers say they don't want young people to be discouraged from applying because their family will lose out on benefits. Authorities in Japan say people remain trapped, with others believed to be dead after an earthquake struck a shopping centre. Nearby homes in Kumamoto are also without power. And the government says it's in touch with French authorities after a warship appeared to fire gunshots behind the Shadow Home Secretary on a boat. Chris Philps says it felt like warning shots, but officials in France say it was a training exercise. LBC weather: showers across much of the north tonight. Further south it'll be mainly dry and clear, with some drizzle reaching some western areas later, a low of 10 degrees.
This is LBC.
What you're hearing is real. The aliens have landed and they have something to say.
Take us to your dealer. Just 0.9% APR on every new Mini.
They just want to go to a mini retailer.
Mini.
You heard them. Off we go. Make contact at your nearest retailer and get 0.9% APR representative across the entire range with a 25% deposit and 24-month term. Mini UK is a credit broker. Order by 30th September, delivered by 31st December. PCP with Mini Financial Services. Subject to status. T's and C's apply. mini.co.uk/offers.
When you're smiling.
Banning Dental Group clinics with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Up to speed. Your Formula One podcast.
Round 12, we head to the Netherlands for the Dutch Grand Prix.
New episodes every Monday and Thursday on YouTube or Global Player.
A message from TfL for drivers and motorcyclists. Before you turn, look around. Is there a cyclist in your path or approaching behind you? You now need to always let them pass before you turn. Follow the highway code to keep everyone safe. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The Big Arch just got bacon. More smokiness, more crispiness, more deliciousness. With juicy beef, cheddar cheese, and that Big Arch sauce. Now topped with crispy bacon. The Big Arch just got bacon.
Until 28th of September 2026. Served from 11 a.m. Subject to availability.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
It's 7:33 on LBC. So I want to talk a little bit about technical education, because Andy Burnham has announced today that secondary schools in England will be able to study subjects like manufacturing and AI, in addition to core academic learning under reforms that he's going to outline. The government said the courses, which will be available from year 10, would be linked to local industries and designed to give children a clearer pathway into work. Well, what's not to like about that, I hear you say? I don't know the answer to that. We're going to talk about it at greater length after 9. But as a bit of a taster, I've got Liberal Democrat education spokesperson and MP for Twickenham, Munira Wilson, with me. Munira, very good evening. I'm not sure you've ever been described as a taster before, but it's first time for everything.
Well, I'll take it. Thanks. Good evening, Ian.
So what do you make of this announcement today?
So, I mean, you said, oh, what's not to like about it? Well, I mean, it's not controversial as a principle. I think all of us in all parties have been saying for a long time we need to try and get technical and vocational education and qualifications on a similar footing to academic and bring about culture change. So the principle is a sound one, and we Liberal Democrats have long called for more collaboration and partnership working between employers and schools and colleges in particular areas. So the principle is sound, but there are a huge number of unanswered questions, mainly practical ones. So the announcement is that this is going to happen in 2 years' time, so from September 2028. I'm not clear whether this is meant to happen in every school in the country. If so, there's a lot of questions about where you're going to find the people, because we know colleges already struggle in many of these technical subjects to recruit people, where you're going to find the funding to do all of this at the same time as there's meant to be major reforms happening on special needs, which is also take up a lot of money and bandwidth in schools, where you're going to find the space to put all of the kit for these things. And aside from all the practical and resource questions, I'm also slightly worried, as we haven't seen much detail yet, whether we're going to start potentially pigeonholing people into certain streams, whether academic or vocational, from the age of 14 onwards, which is really quite young. And I think look, I've got a 12-year-old. She'll be 14 by the time this happens. I'll be amazed if by that point she's got a clearer idea of where she wants to go. I may be wrong, but I think in the old system, in the days when we had grammars and secondary moderns, you typically found that people would struggle to move between the academic and the more technical route.
Really
we
right?
need to make sure that flexibility is built into the system. Sorry, Ian, I didn't catch your question.
At the age of 14, you're choosing which GCSE subjects that you're going to take, and inevitably there you've got a mix of more academic things and less academic things. So I'm not quite sure why this would be too young an age to choose to do more technical things.
Because we haven't seen the detail. We've seen the detailed press release and the comments that we made to the press, which are pretty much in line with that. But if it's going to be taking, quite a deep technical route at the age of 14, I think there are some young people who maybe flourish academically a little bit later. I think you could end up inadvertently baking in disadvantage, because let's be honest, I think people from some of the children from more disadvantaged backgrounds who maybe haven't had the support to flourish academically, maybe push down the vocational stream, when actually they may well have the aptitude with the right support to be in the academic stream. So as long as the flexibility is built in, but we don't know that, Ian. Parliament's not sitting at the moment. We MPs haven't had the chance to question, and that we haven't had the detail of proposals. So I'm just saying these are questions that we need to put to Lucy Powell and Andy Burnham.
But it is... You can never design an education system that is perfect for every single pupil. You've almost, because of the way the school system is designed, you've kind of got to go for the lowest common denominator and create a system that is as good as it can be for the largest number of pupils. And sure, you don't want to exclude people. You don't want to sort of make them choose before they have to, but 14-year-old boys are not as advanced as 14-year-old girls. So, I mean, there's a problem for a start.
Exactly. And so I've generally argued that we try and maintain breadth for longer. My worry is that we're going to potentially narrow options at 14. But also, there's another big practical question in all of this. So Andy Burnham is building on his experience in Manchester. That's great. You can't replicate Manchester everywhere across the country. So you talk to my rural colleagues, particularly in the southwest of England, where actually there isn't, in some parts of that, of, say, Devon, there isn't a dominant industry. So he's saying that the technical education should be linked to the sorts of jobs in those areas. Well, we talk to my colleagues and they'll say, well, there's not an obvious industry to link to. So what would we focus on? And if you're not going to be able to deliver this technical education in every school, which I think will be practically difficult, if young people are having to travel to colleges, well, often there aren't the bus routes there. Some areas don't even have a college. So you can't just cut and paste and copy paste Manchester across the country. So I think there are as I said, the principle is a sound one, but I think we need to see a lot more information about how this can be implemented. And making sure that there is flexibility built into the system so that children who maybe make one decision at 14 but totally change their minds or find that they have an aptitude in something else a few years down the track aren't necessarily pigeonholed. Look, at age 14, I wanted to be a French teacher. I realised a few years later I'd be terrible at teaching.
We have so much in common. I wanted to be a German teacher at the age of 16 and 14, and I also realised after doing my degree that I did not want to teach.
Yeah. No, so there has to be that flexibility. I'm also just intrigued because we've just been through in Parliament, we've just been through a massive piece of children's and schools legislation, which actually legislated to make sure every school, including academies, taught the national curriculum. And now, so we've just legislated for that, and we certainly questioned whether that was a wise thing to do. But now we've got a new education secretary and a new PM coming in saying, actually, we want to give all schools flexibility depending on the dominant industries in their region. So I'm not quite sure how those two fit together. It feels like they're sort of slightly rowing back from what we've just put through Parliament. So there's lots of questions to be answered.
But just in conclusion, Boris Johnson introduced T-levels, technical exams in 2020. Keir Starmer has announced that V-levels are coming in, I think, in 2027. So in a way, this is just sort of surely the latest stage in government trying to promote more technical education, and that has to be a good thing, even if, as you say, we don't have all the details yet.
Yes, the principle is good. The T-levels and V-levels are obviously more 16 plus. And T-levels have actually had a very low take-up, and one of the problems with that has actually been employer engagement and those placements. And so that is another question and concern about how we're going to be able to put in place all of this vocational and technical education from 14 onwards. Trying to get that employer engagement is really, really difficult. So as I say, the principle is a sound one. The devil will be in the detail. And there are places that already do this from the age of 14. I've visited some of them. They're called university technical colleges, and they are absolutely right for some young people. And I remember going to visit one in the northeast and met a 15-year-old who knew at age of 14, the sort of technical areas she wanted to go into, and this absolutely suited her down to the ground. So I think having those options in places, is good. But I'm not sure whether we can build that into every school. I'm not sure that is even a practical or feasible option. And my reading of what came out last night, this morning, is that the idea is that all schools will be offering that. And Iain, if you speak to any school leaders right now, they will tell you they are absolutely stretched budget-wise to the bone. They have cut everything they can possibly cut, and they've got to do a load of SEND reforms and other things that are meant to be coming in, unless Lucy Powell's going to reverse those. I genuinely am puzzled how they're going to be able to do all of this.
I'm old enough to remember Ken Baker, when he was Education Secretary in the Thatcher government, introducing city technology colleges, which I suspect what you went to see was a sort of latter version of that.
It was a Baker Deering initiative, actually, the UTCs that I saw in the northeast.
So this subject has been a matter of discussion for a very, very long time. Munira, thank you very much. That's Munira Wilson, the Liberal Democrat education spokesperson and MP for Twickenham. Let me tell you who's on Cross Question. At 8, Kiki McDonough, founder of Kiki McDonough Fine Jewellery. Dame Theresa Villas, former Conservative MP and Cabinet Minister. The transport journalist Christian Wolmar, he's got a new book out called Fast Track. And James Schneider, long-term advisor to Jeremy Corbyn. Right, let's go back to your calls on Andy Burnham's first 8 days. What do you make of them? Let's go to Sean in concert. I nearly called you Sam there. Sean in concert. How could I, Sean? What would you like to tell me?
How are you doing, son? Thanks very much for your book before I start anyway.
No problem.
I tell you what it is, hey. I am sick to the back teeth of these people getting on and slagging Burnham off. He's only been in the job 8 days, right? We've had 5 prime ministers in 14 years, and they ruined the country, mate. So 8 days, you've got to give the lad a chance. We had bloody Starmer in. He was a secret Tory. He wasn't Labour.
Oh, come off it.
Right? He was a secret
There was nothing Tory about Keir Starmer, apart from the fact he looked like one.
He put all the Tory, what was left of the Tory Johnson part of the clan, right? He brought all his policies in, right? But at the end of the day, you've got to give Andy Burnham a chance.
I agree.
And why are you getting people on this radio station slagging them off?
Well, it's a free country if people want to slag him off. Has anybody slagged him off so far? I don't recall anybody slagging him off so far.
Of course they have, man. They've turned around and said there's been a load there's been a load on the radio slagging him off because he's too slow. He's like, you know what I mean? He's like, I cannot understand what people want in this country.
Well, Sean, you have spent the last few years coming on this radio station, and we love it when you phone in, but you've slagged off virtually every Prime Minister there has been, so don't blame other people if they want to do it. It's a free country.
But at the end of the day, hey, I'm telling you the truth, right? that you're 14 years of hell, right, over the Tories, right? 5 Prime Ministers, right? Starmer, quiet Prime Minister, right? A Tory Prime Minister. We've got a proper Labour man in now that is going to sort this country out, and people are still twisting.
What do you mean by a proper Labour man? Because 40% of his cabinet went to private school. How's that proper Labour?
Look, I didn't go into private school, right? But I don't give a damn about anybody going into private school. I don't give a damn about that. What I give a damn about is a proper Labour government that's going to sort the country out. And I think Burnham is going to do it, mate.
Well, I hope he does, because
stop getting on this radio station and every other radio station and slagging him off. He's only been in the job 8 days, man.
Okay.
The country the people in this country are pathetic.
Did you give Boris Johnson 8 days grace?
What are the one Farage in?
Well, that I mean, you look at the polls now, and that looks less likely. But that is actually Andy Burnham's big responsibility, isn't it? As a lot of Labour Party people will say, he's the one that has got to stop Nigel Farage. We will see if he does. Sean, thank you very much. Oliver says, can you explain how Andy Burnham can implement all of these policies without Parliament being in session or any kind of budget announcement? Doesn't this just store up challenges for when Parliament returns? Well, up to a point. I mean, most of the announcements that he's made so far do not actually cost an awful lot of money. I think he's made spending promises that amount to, well, I say not an awful lot of money. I think they add up to about 1.4 billion. Well, that is pocket money in a budget of 1.3 trillion. So he should be able to find that somehow, I'd have thought. Probably. 7:47.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
The hard hat revolution. Andy Burnham determined to make vocational education the first choice for many GCSE pupils, starting there at the age of 14. And someone charged with making sure that he can deliver on this is Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Pat McFadden, who joins me now.
When I went to university 40 years ago, Nick, working class people at universities were as rare as hen's teeth. And I am delighted that today we have a far higher rate of participation in university. But it's not the only route for everybody, and what we've got to make sure is that a technical pathway has equal status to that.
Let's get straight to your reaction.
One of my grandsons who was not good at school, and he did an apprenticeship for bricklaying. It clicked.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Pick up more sun cream. Impromptu picnic. Late night cinema trip. Do more this summer. Hop on and off with the Weekend Hopper. Get unlimited weekend bus and tram journeys for £1.75 per day every Saturday and Sunday from the 25th of July. Plan your journey with the TfL Go app. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Offer valid from 4:30am on the 25th of July until 23:59 Monday the 31st of August. Always use the same card or device when touching in. For more information, search TfL Hopper.
For whoever they want to be in life, give them a great start with Well Kid. Carefully balanced, great-tasting vitamins and minerals for 4 to 12-year-olds. With specific nutrients such as zinc and vitamin D, which support normal immune system function. The Well Kid range from Vitabiotics, from Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
When your daughter's wedding guest list is double-sided, enjoy every hand-clapping second of it. Be a step ahead with Barclays Premier. With our best savings rates. Barclays, backing your future. Eligibility criteria apply, T's and C's apply.
Volkswagen T-Roc. Until the 3rd of August, get an extra £1,200 off the T-Roc, plus 0% APR.
This is LBC. Message Iain Dale on WhatsApp now on 0345 6060 973.
10 to 8, cross question coming up in 10 minutes' time. If you'd like to ask a question to our panel, the number 0345 6060 973. Let's cross the channel and go to Leipzig in Germany, where we'll find Andy. Andy, very good evening. What would you like to say?
Hi, good evening. I wish Andy Burnham well. I hope everything works out fine. But I watched the Panorama interview yesterday. He didn't look too comfortable, I have to say. Suddenly wearing a suit, and he seemed very cautious. But there's one sort of contradiction in the whole thing that I still can't understand. On the one hand, he's saying that he's going to abide by the Labour manifesto that they won the election on 2 years ago. And on the other hand, he's saying he's going to bring about the biggest change in politics in 40 years. And I don't quite see how those two are compatible. That kind of overrides everything that he said. I mean, I agree with some of the things he's doing. On the point of education, you mentioned earlier, this choice, a choice between brawn and brain. I don't think that's the choice, actually, because, to fit a kitchen, to run a plumbing system, to be a builder and set up your own business, it takes brain as well.
Oh, no, I totally agree with you.
In fact, it takes more, to use the word balls and brain to set up a business like that on your own. So, but there's definitely a space for sort of more technical and sort of practical type professions. But isn't it the case, I think, that because Britain moved to the service sector, because we closed down all the industries, there were suddenly only service jobs, and universities seemed like the better route for those. Plus, it took lots of people off the unemployment register by keeping them in education until they're 23 or 24. But, so I wish him well. But there is this dichotomy. I don't quite understand if he's waiting for 2 years to unleash a new 40-year change, or how he's going to fit that in within the current manifesto.
I think the problem he's got is that the voters nowadays want everything, and they want it now. If he's promising change, they want to see it in the next sort of few weeks, few months, and politics and government doesn't work like that. But when you make these outlandish promises of saying, well, I'm going to change the very fabric of politics, then I look at the people that he's appointed to enable that to happen. Now, John Healey, I think, is a good man. He resigned from the Ministry of Defence on a matter of principle, but he's not going to be a radical reforming chancellor. You're not going to expect fireworks from John Healey. He's a very much steady as you go type of politician, and in the end, the Treasury controls the purse strings, and they will decide as to whether there's going to be a radical reform of a particular area, because they're going to have to fund it.
Absolutely. In that position, who's going to bring about real change, be looking at...
Andy, the phone line from Germany is letting us down, I'm afraid. Have a word with Deutsche Telekom for us. Thank you very much, though. Some really good points that you make there. Dale, the joiner from Scotland, says, Iain, great show. Listen to you every night. I'm very grateful, Dale. I served an apprenticeship and became a time-served joiner at 21. I'm now 33 with my own business and have been going 5 years now. I employ an apprentice and a labourer, and I make a pretty good wage. I think last year, after I paid everything, I made $65,000 for myself. That's good in my eyes, and I'm also helping other people out as well. Fitting a beautiful kitchen and standing back saying I did that is an even better feeling. Tradesmen make the world go round, same as anyone else. I bet no politician can fit a kitchen or a bathroom. Any politicians that can do that, do let me know. But I suspect you're absolutely right there, Dale. And this is why this old-fashioned idea that people who are in jobs like lawyers, accountants, sort of somehow traditionally look down on people who use their hands as well as their brains for their work. It's so old-fashioned, isn't it? It really is, because even people who you think are doing what would be described as manual work, you do actually have to be quite clever to do manual work nowadays. There aren't that many jobs I can think of where you can just go there, not think anything about it, and just do it. I mean, it's a very old-fashioned way of thinking about things, isn't it? Lenny's in Ashford. Hello, Lenny.
Good evening, Ian. I'd like to talk about the bounce of Burnham, because I truly believe that he's got a lot in common with the bouncing bomb. Because when they invented the bouncing bomb, the code word was upkeep. And if he doesn't upkeep our country and that bomb goes off, then that will be the end of the Labour Party.
Right. Not quite sure. So he's the Barnes Wallace of this government. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, well, he's got to be. But he's making all these promises and talk is cheap. But a lot of the things he's saying are not logical.
Like what?
Now my son is older than you, so that was when I went to school in the 50s. Now, when I went to school, we had a metal workshop, a carpentry shop, an art shop, and we had everything to help to prepare us for life after school. And we used to have all the encouragement we had to work. Now, to start all that up, we haven't got the premises and we haven't got the money. We haven't got the teachers or the staff. There's so many negatives, that it's just not logical.
You see, I think you're falling into the trap that, and I didn't say this to her, but I was thinking it, that Munira Wilson fell into earlier. Always coming up with problems, never coming up with solutions. I mean, if Andy Burnham as Prime Minister wants there to be more technical education, he is Prime Minister. He can make it happen. He can get teachers trained to teach all of these subjects. I mean, I'm not sure I buy what you say about, well, there aren't any metalwork classrooms anymore. So, I mean, okay, I was at school a bit after you, but we had metalwork classrooms, woodwork classrooms, domestic science classrooms. I'm sure they still exist in most schools nowadays. It's not as if there's no technical education in most schools, but if you want to beef it up, it's within your power as Prime Minister to do so. Now, I wasn't expecting him to give all the details today. That will come later, and that will be subject to parliamentary scrutiny. But I'm just fed up with this attitude that, oh, no, we can't do that. It's all too difficult.
Well, you've got to live in reality. We're a poor country.
No, we're not a poor country. We're the fifth richest country in the world.
Can we pay our debt off? If we was a business, like I've been in business for 50 years, and if you haven't got enough, if the bank draws in your debt and you haven't got enough money to pay it, you're bankrupt.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Can you tell me that? I mean, who's calling in our debt at the moment? That is the problem for governments. They have to keep the bond markets happy, all the creditors happy. You're absolutely right on that. But there's no sign at all that we are in a situation where the creditors are going to call time on us. So, I mean, don't exaggerate about how poor we are.
Well, if you just look at the news today, how many millionaires have left the country?
Yeah, well, that we will end on a point of agreement, because I think that is a real problem for this country. But people on the left don't seem to care. They think, oh, let them, I won't say what I was going to say, go away, and it won't have any effect on our economy. Well, their spending power's gone. Their power to invest in new businesses and help set businesses up, that's gone if they're no longer here. We've got to make this country a country that people want to come to, even if they are millionaires, or possibly especially if they're millionaires. Lenny, thank you very much indeed. Right, coming up on Cross Question in a moment, I'll be joined by James Schneider, long-term advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, and Christian Wolmar, transport journalist. He's the author of a new book called Fast Track. Dame Theresa Villiers, former Conservative MP and Cabinet Minister, and Kiki McDonough, founder of Kiki McDonough Fine fine jewellery. The number to call 0345 6060 973 if you have a question for our panel. You can WhatsApp on that number, you can text 84850, and we'd love you to watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel. Lots to talk about. I suspect we're going to be talking about Prime Minister Burnham for quite a lot of the programme, but lots of other subjects available too. Up to you.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the government has announced support for families who end up worse off if their children take on a paid apprenticeship. Some families on universal credit will be eligible for a bursary worth £4,500 a year. Education Minister Georgia Gold has told LBC they don't want teenagers to be put off from applying.
So once they start an apprenticeship, it means that the family doesn't lose money in that first year when they start an apprenticeship. And we've heard that for some young people that is a real barrier for starting because they're worried about pushing their family into poverty. So it's one of a number of things, including grants for employers, 300,000 new work experience and training opportunities.
It's part of the government's plan to tackle youth unemployment. Dozens of people are unaccounted for after a shopping centre collapsed following an earthquake in Japan. Several people are believed dead after the 6.8 magnitude quake hit Kumamoto. Volodymyr Zelensky says he's had a good meeting with Donald Trump during a visit to the White House. The two discussed licensing for Kyiv to produce American missile interceptors. The government says it's in touch with French authorities after a warship appeared to fire shots behind the Shadow Home Secretary on a boat. Officials in France say it was a training exercise, but Chris Philip disagrees.
The way it made me feel is that this was an attempt at intimidation because they only shot when they were at the closest point of approach to us. And then the French warship disappeared off. They could obviously see that there was an interview taking place. There were several cameras being used on the back of the fishing boat earlier.
He says he'll be raising the issue with the French ambassador. And Roberto Mancini has been announced as the new manager of the Italian men's football team. It'll be his second spell in the job. Zinedine Zidane's been revealed as the new France manager. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 89 points at 10,871. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. LBC weather: showers across much of the north tonight. Further south, it will be mainly dry and clear, with some drizzle reaching some western areas later, a low of 10 degrees. Showers clearing southern and eastern areas tomorrow, but otherwise hot and sunny with the odd shower in the far west, a high of 35 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids. I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening to you. It's 3 minutes past 8. Welcome to Cross Question with me, Iain Dale. On my panel tonight, to my right, Dame Theresa Villiers, former Conservative MP and Cabinet Minister. Next to her is Christian Wolmar, transport journalist, who's the author of this fine tome, Fast Track. It's the history of high-speed rail. We'll ask him a little bit about that later. Next to me on my left is Kiki McDonough, founder of Kiki McDonough Fine Jewellery. And next to her, James Schneider, long-term advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, who worked with him during his time as Labour leader and also during the founding of your party. So the lines are open for your questions, 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp that number, you can text 84850, and of course you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Well, let's go to our first caller. It is Ben in Clacton. Ben, hello. What would you like to ask?
Yes, I'd like to ask whether the Prime Minister's plan for youth is the best plan possible.
What are you talking about, this technical education announcement today?
Yes.
Right. So as we touched on during the first hour, secondary schools in England will have to offer 14 to 16-year-olds the chance to study vocational qualifications and technical skills such as AI. James Schneider.
It's not everything. We're still waiting for quite a lot of the details, and there are some themes which are quite similar to all of the previous prime ministers for the last 10 years have been saying, that we bent the stick far too far one way with getting almost half of the population to go to university. So it's sensible to try to bend the stick back a little bit. I do think that everyone should have the opportunity to do everything at that age of 14 to 16, and putting people just on one track, whether that's an academic track or a vocational track, is not the right thing. I think it's like...
Can we not do that already, though? With you have to pick your GCSEs at 14, so in a sense you're already making choices.
Sure, but the difference between history and geography is not as much as deciding what type of career that you might end up having. I think what you want is children to be able to learn all sorts of things that equip them for all sorts of things in life, both financial management and how to run their homes and run their lives, skills that they might use in changing workplace, and also things for their minds, their interests, their souls that they'll be interested in. This seems like a good small thing without, there's going to be more detail. But if you look at the other things that Andy Burnham was talking about with young people being failed by the system, not in education or training, this is only a scratch on that quite big problem.
Teresa.
Well, I'm not holding my breath on this. I think in many ways it's a sort of worthy announcement. And as James said, every government has made announcements like this. We've been worrying about this issue since the Victorian era. I think the fact that it doesn't have any extra funding that comes with it is problematic, because schools have already got a lot to deliver. So fitting this in without extra funding is tough on them. No explanation about where they're going to get the teachers from, because with these kind of skills courses, you really need good teachers with real expertise in that particular field. And I think that Labour's Education Act that they've pursued, which takes away local decision-making from schools, actually pushes in the opposite direction. So we've had academies had some of their freedoms restricted. So that actually is pulling in the opposite direction to this announcement that says there should be local input into the decisions schools make. So I think we will have to see some of the retreat on those education changes that the Starmer regime brought in.
Okay, Kiki?
Well, I'd love to see more skills taught in schools. I think it gives children a huge, different ranges of opportunity. I think university isn't for everyone. I think there are a lot of people who've gone to university and been saddled with huge debts with degrees that no employer cares about. And I think it's essential. So many skills have died in this country. And I think there is a massive opportunity for children to be taught other things other than, obviously geography and history, basic things like that. But I think it's a shame. I think it's a brilliant idea. But I think he's coming at it from the wrong way. I think he, first of all, needs to ask the employers why they're not hiring. Because you can teach children as many things as you like, but if people aren't hiring them, then it's not going to matter what you teach them. And I think you need to come at it from the other way. I think he needs to ask a huge number of employers why they're not hiring people. I mean, obviously AI has got something to do with it, but when Rachel Reeves crashed the jobs market in her first budget, a lot of people just are frightened of hiring people, new working practices and everything else. So I think he really needs to start there, find out why people aren't hiring people, and put that right, and then give these children a huge range of opportunities.
To be fair, Tim, when he did something similar-ish in Manchester, there was engagement with local employers, local universities, the key public services, to see what kind of skills are needed. So I imagine that's the approach that he would he would bring to this. I mean, of course, you need to find out what skills people
But
need
there
that
are other
employers
people
actually
in
want.
public services and universities.
No, I said employers.
Employers, yes,
with no
but
business.
outside those.
No, of course.
Business.
No. Business.
And
Why?
I think that's really important. I mean, a lot of businesses will tell you, why would I hire people, with new working practices, employers' contribution and various other things? And they might easily say, not at the moment, thank you. Well, he needs to figure that out.
Okay, Christian Waldman.
Well, I really weep for this generation. I do Speakers for Schools, which is this charity that Robert Peston created, which involves sending kind of Z-list celebrities like me to schools to talk about what I do and how I got my career. And the energy of those kids is absolutely wonderful. I mean, they welcome somebody from outside coming and telling them things. And of course, I tell them, there's lots of opportunity in the railways, and none of them had really kind of thought of this, that the railways are kind of great employer, lots of kind of starter jobs that then can lead on to better things.
But just on that, I think we're going to play a clip later on in the next hour, because we're going to be talking about this subject, where on Love Island the other day, a programme that I'm sure you're very familiar with, Christian, one of the contestants said to one of the others, why are you on this programme? I mean, you work on the railways. Which, I mean, just indicates this sort of snobbish attitude that some people have to people who work in what we would traditionally call sort of more manual
blue-collar
occupations.
Jobs, yeah. No, well, exactly. Well, I think that backs up my point about how we have to sell these kind of jobs to these young people. But one has to remember, this is a very special group of young people coming to the jobs market now because they're affected by COVID. And so I think, good on Andy Burnham for kind of focusing on this generation, because one really worries that they are going to be the forgotten generation because of the damage that was done to them by COVID.
Do you think that 14 years old, year 10, is too early to make this kind of choice?
No, I think what they do in Holland, apparently, is that, they put some kids on these vocational courses at the age of 14. But if they haven't achieve some sort of qualification by the age of 16, they don't let them leave. They absolutely have to have had some kind of useful kind of qualification that will get them into the jobs market quite easily by that age, or else they have to continue at school. I think that's brilliant.
See, I would do that in prisons. I wouldn't let prisoners out unless they can read and write, because if they can't read and write, they're inevitably more likely to reoffend. But that's diverting us.
Great idea.
But even if this scheme works, and I really hope it will, but there are so many other factors that are impeding efforts of young people to get jobs. Not least is the hike in national insurance, the increase in business rates that particularly hit the hospitality sector, which is where so many young people get their first job, and the erosion of the differential in the national living wage. So it used to be that the under 20s had a competitive advantage because the national living wage was somewhat lower for them, and they're losing that advantages with the evening out of the way the national living wage works. And a whole new, as Kiki was saying, a whole new range of workplace regulation, 1970s style rules, including making it more difficult to give children summer jobs, weekend jobs. All of that is making it tough for this generation to get work.
I think that is a really good point. I mean, I think probably everybody around this table, we all had sort of Saturday jobs or summer jobs.
Yeah.
And if you make it difficult for 14, 15, 16-year-olds to get those, they don't get used to the idea of work.
No.
And therefore, if it is, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, but there are people, and we've seen a lot of examples where if you can claim benefits that give you roughly what you would get if you were working, what's the incentive to work? We're not giving people the incentive to work anymore, are we?
No.
Well, I think the gap between what people can get on universal credit and what you can earn if you earn the minimum wage is still pretty substantial, and it's enough of an incentive to work. And that's not the reason why there aren't jobs for young people. This is a very big issue, and there are lots of different factors, but high streets being completely run down across the country. That's a place where you could get lots of sort of easy Saturday jobs for younger people, which you don't have anymore.
Nobody buys newspapers anymore, so you can't do paper rounds.
But by the time
I still do.
You still do a paper round?
No, I don't. I've never done a paper round in my life. No, far too early.
By the time you've employed somebody, though, you've got to pay tax, you've got to contribute to their pension, there's the employer's contribution, they have to pay either PAYE and everything else. I mean, it's really hard. I mean, when I was 16, I worked in Boots the Chemist in the King's Road every holiday, and they gave me £3, whatever it was at the time. Now you couldn't do that. You'd have to have contracts, you'd have to have this, you'd have that. No wonder nobody wants to either do it or wants to have people doing it. It's
I did
exhausting.
Lions Corner House. You
are aging yourself now.
Yeah, I know.
What was your Saturday job, Teresa?
I didn't have a Saturday job, I have to confess. Too busy doing my schoolwork.
Oh, it was such a swat. James?
I'm afraid so.
I worked in an estate agent's.
Did you?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
What did that teach you? You didn't want to be an estate agent.
It taught me loads of things. I learned about the 1987 Tenants and Landlord Act and how the travesty of no-fault eviction. Lots and lots of things.
It turned you into a Corbynite.
It set me on the road towards socialism. Yeah.
Right. Ben, great question. Thank you very much for it. We'll carry on with more questions in just a moment on some different subjects. It's 8:15.
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m.
Andy Burnham says 14-year-olds will be allowed to pursue a more vocational education. He wants to make a hard hat just as respected as a graduation cap. But won't this be a disaster for social mobility and for aspiration? And therefore, isn't this plan from our new Prime Minister a pretty terrible one? Your calls on it all from 10 o'clock.
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
What you're hearing is real. The aliens have landed and they have something to say.
Take us to your dealer. Just 0.9% APR on every new Mini.
They just want to go to a mini retailer.
Mini.
You heard them. Off we go. Make contact at your nearest retailer and get 0.9% APR representative across the entire range with a 25% deposit and 24-month term. Mini UK is a credit broker. Order by 30th September, delivered by 31st December. PCP with Mini Financial Services. Subject to status. T's and C's apply. mini.co.uk/offers.
A message from TfL for drivers, motorcyclists and cyclists. Before you turn, look around. Is there someone crossing or waiting to cross at the junction? You now need to always let them cross before you turn. Follow the highway code to keep everyone safe. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Guys, gals and non-binary pals, we're Copperfield, the breast cancer awareness charity. This is your reminder to check your chest. Learn how at copperfield.org.
Gals, guys, get this. Primark's dropped their prices on hundreds of our favourites, like pure cotton PJs and men's cosy hoodies from £7, or women's cotton rich jeans from £9, and kids' extra comfy joggers just £3.50. There's only one word for that. Go on, show us how it's done. Iconic! Couldn't have put it better myself. Iconic value like never before at Primark.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 17 minutes past 8. On the panel tonight, Kiki McDonough, founder of Kiki McDonough Fine Jewellery, Dame Teresa Villas, former Conservative MP and Cabinet Minister, Christian Wolmar, transport journalist, who's the author of the new book Fast Track, and James Schneider, long-term advisor to Jeremy Corbyn. What are you up to now? Are you still doing a bit with Jeremy?
No, I'm doing what I've been doing for quite a number of years. I'm the communications director for the Progressive International, and then I do a bit of consulting, a bit of this and a bit of that as well.
Okay. I just always hate describing people as former, like what they're doing now. Right, a WhatsApp question from Kai in Cambridge. The new Education Secretary, Lucy Powell, has repeated her criticism that the student loan system is egregious in how unfair it is to those paying loans back. Is she right, and how should it be fixed? Well, if she fixes this, I think that would be a major feather in her cap, because I think everyone recognises that the student loan system is very, very unfair. Kiki, what do you think should be done?
Well, I think it is incredibly unfair to have 20-year-olds leaving somewhere with debts of sort of 40 grand, 30 grand and paying interest at 7 or 8% is just bonkers. But I think it's a symptom of the fact that we've got some universities that really should be skill centres, actually. I would turn them into, some of these universities, into centres where people can develop skills, develop entrepreneurial skills, business skills, and sorts of other things, rather than come out with a degree that an employer doesn't care about, employers don't care about, and with this massive debt is just criminal, I think.
Wasn't the big mistake turning the polytechnics into universities?
Yes, 100%.
I mean, that was
100%.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they did that, but it sort of then really changed their status instead of.
That was everybody has to go to university, which is nonsense. I didn't go to university, and I built a successful business.
That was John Major that did that.
No.
Was it? I thought it was Mrs. Thatcher.
No, she's not to blame for everything. I know you think she is, but it was actually John Major.
Okay. He's also to blame for the privatisation of British Rail, but that's another story.
We might come on to that later. You never know. Teresa?
Well, the most controversial aspect of the student loans issue is, I think, the so-called Plan 2 system, where those in that scheme have been particularly harshly treated. And Kemi Badenoch put forward some proposals to moderate the interest rate and try and give help to those graduates, and I think the government also has announced that has to be reviewed. It's not realistic or feasible to that to continue. But in terms of the wider question about student finance, it's incredibly hard to find the right answers. But I would really highlight the importance of degree apprenticeships. If you combine the two, that can considerably reduce the cost of fees and the long-term debts. And this was something that under the previous government they were greatly pushing, and I hope it remains a popular option, because you can get the best of both worlds whilst coming out of university with less debt.
Just as an aside, you mentioned Kemi Badenoch there. She is apparently having a purge of Conservative candidates. Now, I know you've been fairly elliptical when I've asked you if you wanted to go back into the comments. I know, well, I always do, because I'm interested.
Don't worry, Ian, I haven't been purged.
You haven't been purged. That was the answer to the question that I wanted to pose. James?
I mean, tuition fees were the big mistake. Then there are a subsequent set of mistakes that come afterwards, privatising the loan book, ramping up the interest rates, increasing tuition fees, so that now you've basically got the worst possible form of graduate tax that is a crushing debt on young people. I think rather than warm words from politicians saying, yes, no, this has been a bad thing and it doesn't really work, there needs to be a staged plan which deals with the three elements: the interest that's being paid, the debt that's accrued, much of which will not be paid off and therefore really should be on the public balance sheet because it isn't going to be paid off, and then how do you fund universities without student loans. And I accept that you can't do all three of those things immediately overnight. You can do relief on interest rates immediately. And then the other things, there should be a plan worked out for bringing tuition fees down to zero and dealing with the backdated debt that people have. Now, that's not an easy thing, but if you don't have a plan for doing that, then you're not really addressing the issue.
But if you reduce tuition fees to zero, inevitably universities are going to say, well, if you're cutting off most of our income, therefore the taxpayer has to provide it. The taxpayer is going to say, well, yeah, we can't have 50% of 18-year-olds going to university then.
You can fund education through general taxation, as we used to in the past. Maybe 50% of kids, it's not university education, but it's some other type of education.
No, but when I went to university, 17% went to university, and I got a grant. We didn't have to pay tuition fees. Nobody, I don't think, would suggest that we should only have 17% of 18-year-olds going to university.
No,
but the taxpayer is going to say, well, I'm not really willing to pay an extra 3 pence on my income tax just so middle-class kids can go to university.
Well, firstly, it's not going to be 3 pence on or it shouldn't be 3 pence on ordinary people's income tax bill. But I also think it's looking at it the wrong way round. We shouldn't only be looking at how we pay for university education, but for lifelong training, reskilling, retraining, and we should work out how much that is going to cost and how we're going to fund that, rather than setting up people that go to a particular type of education, which is university, against the rest of the population. Instead, everybody should have opportunities to learn in whatever ways that's useful for them and to gain the skills that they need.
Right, let's go on to another question. It's from Hassan in Cambridge. Hassan, very good evening. What would you like to tell us or ask us?
Hello. Yes, hi there. So Burnham has made a series of sort of crowd-pleasing small announcements on buses, on VAT, etc. Do you think this is indicative of a fundamental shift in public spending, or will he sort of just continue with the status quo Starmer policies and also with the dose of defence spending thrown into the mix?
Christian.
Well, I think that these are important measures, and they have given Burnham a good start. I mean, remember, the first thing Starmer did was to abolish winter fuel allowances. I mean, and the second thing he did was taking money off disability allowances. I mean, it was insane. It would just set the tone for it. So I think that Andy Burnham has set a very good tone for this. But look, I think also the way that we look at this has to be in a wider context. Take the bus thing, for example. I got rang up by the BBC to do a piece on this. And of course, the first question that the BBC said was, well, how much is it going to cost and how is it going to be paid for? And
perfectly reasonable question.
Said, no, let me finish this. I don't think it is. Burnham then was reduced to saying, oh, it's going to come out of the aid budget. Now, the government has a budget overall of 1,300 billion pounds, right? This is a measure that might cost 300 or 400 million. It's kind of small change. It doesn't, we don't have to look at everything in terms of the narrow way that it's been costed. Instead, we have to look at the societal value. The societal value of creating extra bus services and getting people to use buses is enormous. There'll be more people have access to employment, there'll be fewer cars on the road, and all that, the better for the environment, etc. And that's the way we have to start looking at the economy.
But bus travel declined by 12% in Manchester when Andy Burnham was mayor, and yet we're told that it was all such a success.
Well, that was a short-term thing while they're sorting it out, and hopefully they'll restore it. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have more buses, Ian.
I'm not. I wouldn't suggest that.
There's whole swathes of the country where there are no longer any bus services, and they need to be restored, and that is should be a basic right, like as it is in Switzerland, for example, where every community has a bus service that takes you to the nearest station.
Am I not right in thinking, I haven't got the figures for this in front of me, but I'm sure that if you look at the overall passenger miles of buses now compared to what it was 20 years ago, that it's much higher?
Only probably because of London, and I think that skews the figures. I mean, outside of London, it's much lower, and inside of London, because, of course, we have a wonderful bus network in London that, is the envy of the rest of the country. And that was because, actually, Ian, it wasn't privatised and it wasn't deregulated.
I thought you'd say it was because of Boris Johnson. Teresa, now you will presumably welcome this, particularly the bus one, because he's adopting a Tory policy of £2 rather than £3.
Get around for £2. Yes, it was a Conservative policy, and Christian and I don't always agree on things, but we can totally agree on the vital importance of bus services. Economically, they're crucial in terms of opportunities. I mean, coming back to young people getting jobs, they're not going to be able to work if they can't get to work. So I'm hugely supportive of efforts to improve bus services and reduce fares. But I do think Hassan has absolutely put his finger on a crucial issue. We've got a new Prime Minister who is dishing out various sort of schemes which have certain attractions, but he's not very specific about how they're funded, and I think that issue is going to become that much more.
That doesn't matter.
in the context of overall government spending, a few $100 million here or there is nothing much. Of course, overall, you have to have a budget and some responsibility.
But overall, in his first 8 days, he spent $1.4 billion.
Okay, but you don't need to kind of count every penny in that way. You know, $1.4 billion is still a marginal amount of money in terms of $1,300 billion a year, right?
But under that logic, budget, so is $100 billion.
And who knows how the economy is going to do over the next year. If it does slightly better, then they have more money in their coffers. If they're slightly worse, they have less, and they have to have a tighter budget. But we should stop counting the cost of everything, and we should look at the value of things.
Kiki.
Well, I don't know where to start with that one, really. I like the fact that he's come up with some ideas, and some good ideas, and they will help people. But he's not going to help people if he carries on spending without telling us where it's coming from, because this country is in a financial mess, and we need to be told where the money's coming from. And you make 1.4 billion. I mean, do you know how many noughts there are on that? I mean, I'm faint to Google. You know, it is quite a lot of money, 1.4 billion, and I think you have to be really careful on this. You know, the country is teetering on quite a big debt, and I agree with a lot of things he's done, and I love the fact that he's sounding sort of more optimistic. You know, we've had the doom and gloom of Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves for so long, and now there's sort of hope that someone is going to put forward some ideas and things. But it is a long playing record. But
maybe hope costs a bit of money. Hope does cost a bit of money.
Yes, but that's...
And this is 1%. The 1.4 billion is 1% overall government spending.
I agree. I'm sure hope does cost some money.
In 8 days.
But in a country that's doing really well, it's great ideas. Implement tomorrow. But this country is in debt.
James.
Because we have such a weird political system, Andy Burnham is sort of both being the leader of the opposition and the government at the same time. When you're in opposition at the beginning, you basically set out directions of travel and you say, these are the things that we should focus on, and here are the problems in society that I want to look at. But he's also already the Prime Minister, so he's got to do things which are, in the grand scheme of things, small. Of course, they cost money, but in the grand scheme of things, small, in order to show change. My worry is that, as Hassan, the caller, said, the direction of travel on the major issues doesn't look like very much change, not only from the Starmer government, but from the Sunak government and those beforehand, on wealth inequality, which is sucking capital away from the productive parts of our economy, let alone make it harder for people to buy home. We're in this insane heat wave with people being burnt out of their homes across Europe, with fires taking down farms here in Britain, in Wiltshire, but instead we're going to drill more in the North Sea. Our relationship with the world appears completely unchanged. We're going to carry on being a US vassal, carry on arming Israel, the big increase in militarism.
To be fair, I don't think Andy Burnham said any of that.
I'm saying there's no evidence to suggest a change in direction. He said, Hassan said, is it going to be the same thing? I'm saying it seems that on all of these major things, which are really the key issues in society, public ownership, housing, I mean, I don't quite agree with how Christian was presenting the social return on things, but I do think that we need to completely break open how the Treasury accounts for things, because we should do it like businesses do it, where if you invest in something and it brings a return, that is on your balance sheet. So we should be looking at public sector net wealth, not just the fiscal rules that Rachel Reeves bequeathed to us. And then there's tax dodgers to go after, multinational companies that barely pay anything. These are all very big issues that are the things that, if you want to move things much more than tinkering around the edges that we've seen, I'm welcome massively bus travel moving from £3 to £2, but it's not going to really deal with any of these big issues that we're facing. And on those things, it does look much more like continuity.
OK, right, let's get some news headlines on LBC. It's 8:33. Here's Katie Dartford.
Households on universal credit are due to receive more money to help teenagers take on apprenticeships. Ministers say they don't want young people to be discouraged from applying because their family will lose out on benefits. Authorities in Japan say people remain trapped, with others believed to be dead after an earthquake struck a shopping centre. Nearby homes in Kumamoto are also without power. And the government says it's in touch with French authorities after a warship appeared to fire gunshots behind the Shadow Home Secretary on a boat. Chris Philps said it felt like warning shots, but officials in France say it was a training exercise. LBC weather: showers across much of the north tonight. Further south it will be mainly dry and clear, with some drizzle reaching some western areas later. A low of 10 degrees.
This is LBC.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play, that's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
Start doing more of what you love from more places. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest network through Vodafone 3 merger based on mobile sites versus major providers. Network improvements by 2034. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN, subject to coverage.
Goldbank London, a safe and sound way to buy and sell gold.
Start your journey in gold today.
Visit goldbank.co.uk.
Imagine you in a nice comfy seat, with your hands behind your head, taking in the views, instead of taking on the road, maybe even taking a nap. That's the bliss of getting where you need to go without worrying about driving. Book your train journey via avantiwestcoast.co.uk and we'll take you there. Avanti West Coast. Feel good travel.
The Big Arch just got bacon. More smokiness, more crispiness, more deliciousness. With juicy beef, cheddar cheese and the Big Arch sauce. Now topped with crispy bacon. The Big Arch just got bacon.
Until the 28th of September 2026, served from 11 a.m, subject to availability.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:35 on LBC. On my panel, James Schneider, long-term advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, Christian Wolmar, transport journalist, who's the author of the new book Fast Track, Dame Teresa Villas, former Conservative MP and Cabinet Minister, and Kiki McDonough, founder of Kiki McDonough Fine Jewellery. Christian, your book, which I'm brandishing in front of the camera now, Fast Track, the subtitle, The Extraordinary Story of High-Speed Rail. Well, it is an extraordinary story, and it doesn't have a happy ending, does it? But I'm wondering if our new Prime Minister might resurrect the Birmingham to Manchester HS2. That would be his equivalent of Gordon Brown making the Bank of England
independent. It does have a happy
independent.
ending, but not in this country. I mean, luckily, I first went to Penguin that's saying, let's do a book on HS2. And I was very pleased. They rejected that and said, let's do a book on high-speed rail across the world. So I got to go to China and Japan and kind of full of kind of
you must have had a massive
joys
advance.
of railways. Yes. No, I didn't. I funded it on the cheap myself. But it just showed to me, like, how far we are behind on this. I mean, just the statistic of China is worth kind of dwelling on. China's built 30,000 miles of high-speed line since 2008. That's less than 20 years. And they run 10,000 high-speed trains a day and carry 10 million
but it's a massive country. You can't really compare it to our country.
I mean, you can compare the fact that they've managed to build a vast amount of railway, 3 times.
Yeah, because they don't have a planning system like we do.
They don't have a planning system. They are authoritarian state.
They have a dictator.
Nevertheless, they have to organise this. They have to procure all the equipment. They have to project manage it. They have to have all the engineers, all the skills there. And we can't build a 130-mile line between what I call Acton and Aston in the space of 20 odd years. It's going to finish in 2039. I mean, that does show something fundamentally wrong. I know China is not a democracy, and that kind of helps them, but they have built an amazing system, and it's safe and efficient and looks wonderful.
But do you think there is any prospect of HS2 being resurrected?
No, well, HS2 will be resurrected. I mean, it will be built, between at least Old Oak Common and
but what about Birmingham to Manchester?
It will get resurrected at some stage. But I'm afraid even you're rather younger than me, and I don't think you and I are going to see it. It just since since the first bit is not going to be finished till 2039, and if they build a bit to Manchester, that will take another 10 years. That's 2049. I'll be 100 by then, so I'm unlikely to be around, and we're not going to see it. But it will eventually, probably at the start of the 22nd century, they'll say, oh, we've got this wonderful railway kind of running, and they'll forget that it cost an arm and a leg.
Right, well, the book is called Fast Track. It's by Christian Wolmar, and his books on railways are always worth reading. Right. That's a quote for the back cover for the paperback. A WhatsApp question from Shibley, who says, it's a very short question, why is it so hard to build a national care service? And this is something that Andy Burnham has genuinely been interested in ever since he was Health Secretary back in the Gordon Brown government. Why is it so difficult, Teresa?
Because it is very, 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 very expensive. And it's been incredibly difficult to build consensus for any solution because of the potential taxes that might end up being levied as a result. I think, the crisis in social care is another crucial reason why a grip has to be got on the welfare bill. We cannot afford a welfare state of the size it is at the moment and still have a properly funded social care system. So when the new Prime Minister comes forward with his social care plans, we have to see a responsible attitude to the public finances. I mean, Christian may have a point about what's been announced so far not being huge, but the cost of social care is massive and ongoing. And so to have any credibility whatsoever, the new Prime Minister has to come up with a costed and affordable scheme.
But when you say we've got to attack the welfare state bill, which bit of the welfare bill would you lop off?
Well, I think, sadly, we can't afford the degree of support which is currently given for the less serious mental health conditions. We need to find a better way to give people the ability to recover from these conditions and to get them into work as the best way to increase their prosperity, their health, their happiness. Parking people on benefits is bad for the taxpayer because it costs money, but it's also bad for the individuals themselves. So it's that combination of providing real opportunities for work, ensuring people are capable of working, and also introducing some conditionality into
What about the pensions triple lock? Well, that would automatically raise $15 billion a year. I mean, and I never understand why this is a subject that so many politicians from all of the three main parties are shying away from when they all know perfectly well that something needs to change on it.
I think it's the working age benefits that we need to focus on. That is where the massive expansion has come over recent years. That is where we are seeing people being written off and left on benefits and excluded effectively from the labour market, and that needs to change, and that has to be the real focus.
James?
The solution, I think, is quite obvious to everybody, which is we need a National Health Service style care service. There have been proposals for this that have been properly costed over the years. In Labour's 2019 manifesto, there was one which would end fees for free personal care. It was costed at £10 billion a year by 2024, the end of the last Parliament, with a lifetime pay cap of £30,000. It is a doable thing. You need to do some other things as well. You need to look at how you can bring into the public and rationalise between the care home sector, which is very diverse. You have some small kind of mom and pop type things, and then private equity is very large in there, and that's basically designed to rinse the sector of money, set up with two companies, a company that is essentially a property company and a company that delivers the service, and money is sucked out from one to the other. And then you also need a workforce plan. We need to have more care workers We need to have training for more care workers. It should be an expanding area for employment for young people, and that should all be integrated into a plan. But the idea that this is somehow beyond the capacity of us collectively as a country and that we can't find the money to look after our old people properly is a disgrace. Of course we can find the money to that. You could have a wealth tax on financial assets over £10 million of 2% a year, which would bring in 2.5 times the amount needed to fund the plan that I just laid out.
Kiki.
Well, we have got an ageing population and it's going to get worse. So we are going to have to take some pretty drastic action on this. But then again, it's, who's going to pay for it? But just to take up Teresa's point about taking people off welfare, you can take people off welfare, but, I read about this girl the other day who sent off 300 CVs, didn't get a single reply. Well, if I sent off 300 CVs and didn't get a reply, I'd probably be going to the doctor and saying, I'm really worried, I can't do this, and they will put you on. They'll put you on that, and then you get benefits. So you've got to solve the job market, I think. I think, yes, to train people who want to be trained to look after the elderly, I think it's a very rewarding experience, but I think it's looked on upon in this country as something that's not very pleasant, and which is a shame because my mother was in a care home and the staff absolutely loved her. She had so many stories to tell them about what happened in the war and all these sort of things. Most of them came to her funeral, So I think it is a very rewarding job, but we've got to persuade people that it is. And
actually make it attractive to people to want to go into it.
Yes.
When you read stories in rural areas where care workers aren't paid for the amount of time it takes them to get from one appointment to another. They can't even claim their petrol back.
No.
And they're paid minimum wage. Well, who on earth would want to do that job?
No, well, I agree. I mean, when I was at school, you did that, during term time, you'd go on a Saturday and everybody would have to do it, and you'd go and visit the people in the old people's homes up the road and things. And actually, I think most of us who are all cynical and, we're all wearing bell-bottom trousers and, having a great time, but we all came back from it, rather admiring these people who'd done extraordinary things with their lives, and you never knew that. And I do think it's a shame that it's looked on as sort of clearing out sick.
Okay. Well, it sometimes is. Christian.
The question was, why can't we actually develop this system? And I'm afraid that one of the answers to that is the right-wing press. Because whenever any idea is put forward, it becomes a death tax. Actually, I'm quite into the idea of death taxes because when I'm dead, I don't really care what happens to my money. So I might as well kind of give some of it to the state. And it was Charles Moore today. Charles Moore, who's kind of fairly right-wing guy, actually said today, why should it be a right of younger people to inherit their parents' home? Why should that be absolutely protected? And that's a good point. If you've lived a life and you've got a house, a nice house, why shouldn't that eventually be sold for your social care?
You own it, and therefore you should have a right to decide what happens to it when you die.
If you need the social care, then maybe you should contribute towards it, and that would actually be a big dent in the overall bill if actually it was accepted that you might have to pay for your care at the end of life. It seems a reasonable deal.
But when Theresa May tried to introduce that in the 2017 election, we all know what happened.
The pension tax, yes, a dementia tax. And that is a problem that we can't have a decent debate about. I mean, my wider point is, we should be able to have a grown-up debate and not just talk about, it's going to cost X. We should actually say what it's going to do. And by the way, one added thing is that we could reduce the social care bill by living a healthier life. Right, if people kind of had healthier food, did exercise, did all the things they're supposed to do. And governments should encourage that. And we do nothing enough. Well, not anything like enough. Health prevention is a kind of tiny bit of what the NHS does. The NHS deals with illness and care, whereas actually it should be dealing with preventing illness.
Theresa May's policy, I think, was rightly condemned as the dementia tax. I think what happened in that general election was that
James Schneider agrees with the right-wing press.
Well, I mean, I think we called it the dementia tax. What I think was happening in that election is that if you ask most people in Britain what type of care service should we have, they say one like the NHS, because that is the basic understanding of how you provide. You tax, and then everybody gets provision. And I think in order to head that off, because they thought they were going to win such a whopping landslide, rather than that which would involve taxing the very rich and capital in order to pay for it, thought we're going to take on small holders of capital, people that have managed to save up enough money and pay off their mortgage and own their own home. And that was rightly rejected. People should, through the dint of living in a dignified, civilized society, who have paid into the system by living in the country all of their lives, deserve care as a right.
Right, more questions to come in just a moment. It's 8:48.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
The Reform Party have reported Green Party leader Zach Polanski to the police over an image which they say is incitement to violence. But hang on, what happened to the party of free speech?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Pick up more sun cream. Impromptu picnic. Late night cinema trip. Do more this summer, hop on and off with the Weekend Hopper. Get unlimited weekend bus and tram journeys for £1.75 per day every Saturday and Sunday from the 25th of July. Plan your journey with the TfL Go app. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Offer valid from 4:30am on the 25th of July until 23:59 Monday the 31st of August. Always use the same card or device when touching in. For more information, search TfL Hopper.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play, that's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
Start doing more of what you love from more places. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the Nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest network through Vodafone 3 merger based on mobile sites versus major providers. Network improvements by 2034. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN, subject to coverage.
Honestly, I've been putting MTD off. First it was, I'll do it after this job. Then, after some grouting. After sorting the back of the van. After fish fingers and peas. And then I thought, no, just get it done.
Get MTD done simply with Sage for free. Just connect to your bank, we'll sort your transactions, then submit your update to HMRC. Search Sage MTD.
Payday! You know what that means, don't you, Tim?
Yes, I do. Create a spreadsheet for bills, savings, groceries.
Or we can literally do anything else, because Monzo sorts your salary for you.
Anything, you say?
Anything.
Great. Let's create a spreadsheet and catalogue our socks by colour, thickness, elasticity, fibre content, length, wooliness...
Okay, I'll order pizza.
Monzo. Get busy living. Monzo current account required. UK resident 16 plus. T's and C's apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
8:51 on LBC. Kiki McDonough, Dame Teresa Villas, Christian Wolmar and James Schneider taking your questions. Here's one from Simon in Golders Green. Simon asks, if millionaires are so bothered by having to pay a bit of tax that they all head off overseas, are they really the sort of unpatriotic people we really want in this country anyway? Well, the free market think tank, the Adam Smith Institute, has claimed that the number of millionaires in Britain has fallen to its lowest level since 2008 at 442,000. I think this partly depends on who you talk to as to how many millionaires are in the country. I read an article the other day that said there were 2.3 million, which I did think was a slight exaggeration. How many billionaires do you think there are in the country?
151.
157. But maybe 6 have gone since I read it. This is
And a third of them have... this was true in 2019. A third of them have donated to the Conservative Party.
Only a third.
Only a third. Yeah, slacking. Get a new treasurer.
But I mean, is this really an argument that people really don't care if millionaires are leaving the country because their money isn't being spent in this country? A lot of millionaires or billionaires provide the seed capital for new startup companies. They're not going to do that if they aren't here anymore. Gary Lineker was very heavy on this, and then it turns out that he's been trying to persuade the Inland Revenue that he shouldn't be paying as much tax as he is. So there's a lot of hypocrisy going on here, isn't there?
Well, I'm sure there's lots of hypocrisy in many things, but I think the basic point that Simon is making, that if you don't want to contribute to society and leave because you don't contribute to society, there is a word for that, and that is antisocial and unpatriotic. I think that's the basic point. We should all contribute to the society in which we live, and those who have been fortunate in one way or another, that doesn't mean that people won't have worked hard and done impressive things. But if you have tens of millions of pounds, then you should be paying much more back into society than you currently are.
And they would argue that obviously there are exceptions. There are probably many who aren't paying the amount of tax that they should be. But if you look at the amount of income tax that's paid by the top 1% compared to everybody else, so it's 30% of income tax comes from the top 1%.
But that's because incomes have risen at the top and they haven't for everybody else. So that's going to happen mechanically. That doesn't mean that they're particularly paying back more into society. It does nothing for society if we structure our economy around the inflation of asset prices. That doesn't make the people who own them any happier. It is a bad use of resources from the point of view of the economy. And if you're talking about investing in new industries, new technology, it sucks capital towards the holding of assets rather than investing in things which are difficult, like new factories, new machinery, new infrastructure.
Kiki?
Well, I don't have a problem with living in a country with lots of millionaires because they spend money.
They can buy your fine jewellery.
Oh, they can buy my fine jewellery. They can buy my fine jewellery, but they buy cars. They have parties. Now, people say, why are they having parties? Well, that's a man doing the DJ, that's a marquee, that's a drinks person, they spend on a huge range of things that people like me and other people who sell them things, we get wealthier. That's what it's about. You've got to generate. A country that's generating wealth is a healthy country. And we have a funny attitude in this country to people who make money. And I think it's wrong because people who make money spend money. And that's what we want.
Okay, Teresa?
I think it does have an economic downside when we lose these millionaires. They're entrepreneurs. They could be investing in this country. So I think it's a demonstration that raising taxes does have consequences, but I imagine it goes further than a few millionaires leaving the country. There will be people who perhaps are reducing their working hours because it's not so worthwhile to keep working if you're going to pay more tax as a result. And I think that's one of the mistakes the current government is making, as Labour governments always do. They're borrowing more, they're taxing more, they're spending more. And that is one of the reasons why growth is pretty sluggish.
There was an interesting article that I read the other day that said Scotland, since it's put its top rate up to 48%, it's actually getting £22 million a year less in tax revenue for having done it. I mean, you and I have been banging on for years about the Laffer curve and being decried by people on the left, but that is living proof that you put taxes up, you don't necessarily get extra income.
Yes, and that was quite a reputable group that came up with that conclusion. I think Dan Needle was one of them, who is by no means a Laffer curve advocate.
This is very true. I was very surprised that it was him that revealed this. Christian?
Well, I don't necessarily trust these statistics from an institute that is pretty unaccountable, and we don't quite know who funds it and how it's funded. And I think that the numbers are kind of...
Well, we know that millionaires are leaving. I mean, we can argue about the numbers, but we do.
We really?
We do. I mean, there have been all sorts of different organisations that have come out with figures.
There's anecdotal evidence, but I don't think swathes of millionaires are leaving. And many of them, in any case, have their money...
It's only like Michael Gove. You don't trust the statistics, the experts.
Well, many of them have their money in places like Monaco or Guernsey or whatever, and kind of shield a lot of their wealth as it was. And I think that's a far greater scandal than a bit of extra tax, is the fact that so many people get away with paying barely any tax on company profits and even their own income, because there's all these tax havens across the world which we seem to do absolutely nothing about. I mean, why does France have Monaco, for Christ's sake? Why do we have the Channel Islands and Isle of Man where people can kind of shield their wealth?
Well, then,
I think that's a much... so why don't we talk about that as a much more important scandal?
We can talk about it, but the question wasn't about that.
Well, I think the question kind of covers that to some extent, because if you're saying that people are leaving because of high taxes, you're also suggesting that they're actually paying these taxes, when what we know is that a lot of them aren't, because there's these tax havens.
Most of the reporting about millionaires supposedly leaving the country is sourced to one organisation, Henley and Partners, which itself is a company that supports high net worth individuals, so-called, to gain golden passports and to leave the country. It is a marketing scam which is being supported by mainly the billionaire-owned print press for quite obvious reasons.
Shame it's 8:58. We could have gone on with that for another half an hour, couldn't we? Right, let's go to our fun question. It's Christian in Crawley who's provided it. A Quaker chaplain who posts on YouTube and TikTok has been dubbed Mandy Burnham because her glasses, thank you. Her glasses, eyebrows and short hair are all similar to the Prime Minister's. If you're watching on LBC, on the LBC app, Global Player or the LBC YouTube channel, and this is why you need to, because you can see this lady now. She's on the screen at the moment. Her real name is Emma Roberts. But which famous person do you think you look most like, or have been told that you look like? James.
Tom Cruise claimed that he was me on the Graham Norton show.
How on earth did that come about? Because you're about 2 feet taller than him.
I am, but the photo was of me sitting down, so that maybe helped. We were in the 2017 general election. We were driving into the manifesto launch, and our car ran. I was with Jeremy Corbyn in the back of the car, and our driver, special security, it's all fine, it wasn't our fault, ran over Laura Koonsberg, cameraman's foot. And as Jeremy and I heard the crunch, we both looked around in horror, and a Channel 5 photographer took a photo of us looking like that. And it went up on the wires, and people started saying, "Why is Tom Cruise in the back of the car with Jeremy Corbyn?" And there was a whole host of articles about it, and I got ribbed and taken the piss out of that. I thought, okay, that's fine. And then at the question time head-to-head, Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn, next door to where they're debating, there's the spin room, and there are big screens all over, and there are all the journalists there. My job was to go in afterwards and say how brilliantly Jeremy Corbyn had done and how terribly Theresa May had done. And they left the screens up, but they turned off the volume. And it was BBC Two, and the Graham Norton show was on next. So I'm there talking to journalists saying, yes, it was like this, and it wasn't like that, etc. And I see Tom Cruise there, and then he's shown this photo of me, and I don't know what on earth he said. And I think, oh, I've got to go. I kind of panic, and I pretend that I've finished doing stuff and go into the bathroom, go on iPlayer, get my headphones, scroll back, and he says, "Oh, yeah, that's me." Very, very strange.
Well, that was a lot longer anecdote than I was expecting. Kiki.
I'm going to look at you in a completely different light now.
Kiki, can I say, I think there's something of the Princess Diana about you.
Well, that would be very nice. Listen, I mean, honestly,
she's just looking very coquette.
I am. Thank you so much, because I take that as a huge compliment. Who do I look like? Well, it could be Cindy Crawford, it could be Christy Turlington. Just take your pick, really.
Okay. Teresa.
Well, I don't think anyone's ever told me I look like a famous person, so I haven't got a suggestion.
Who do you think you look like?
There isn't anyone I can think of that has struck me as someone.
Well, this is a very boring answer, if I may say so.
Very boring answer, I'm afraid. I might have your questions.
I might ask the other panel who they think looks, but anyway, maybe not. Christian.
Well, I have two slightly not very famous people. Peter Hennessy is Professor.
I can see that.
I've had several people come up to me at parties, say, "Hello, Peter, how are you?" And the other one is Michael Grade, Lord.
Really?
No.
That's no. I think
No.
Nikki Haslam. Maybe
Right.
Nikki Haslam.
Nikki Haslam.
I've got a better one.
Okay, what's that?
The Professor in Back to the Future.
You're not the first person. Especially when I've got longer hair.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you all very much indeed for coming on the programme tonight. On tomorrow's panel, we have the Conservative MP and former Cabinet Minister David Mundell, Labour MP Rachel Blake, the Green New Deal Rising Campaign's Hannah Martin, plus LBC's own Henry Riley. Now, coming up in the next hour, we're going to turn our attention again to Andy Burnham's announcement today on technical education. But I also want to ask you something related to this. Why is it that so many people still in 2026 are really snobbish about people who do manual work? Because people who employ others to do work in their house, whether they're plumbers or kitchen fitters or anything like that, they have a skill which surely everyone else should respect. And yet there are still so many insulting comments made about people who do manual work. Do you get really hacked off if you're one of them?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, some families on Universal Credit are going to be given financial assistance to help teenagers take on an apprenticeship. Ministers believe that rolling out the new bursts plans for more technical training for young people in schools in England.
We've had a system built for too long around the university route, and it sends a message to some young people that they're some kind of second-class citizens. And it's just not right. They need an education system that works for them as well.
The Conservatives say there needs to be a cut in benefits to reduce youth unemployment. Several people are believed to be dead and dozens missing after an explosion at a shopping centre in Japan. It happened after the country was hit by a 6.8 magnitude earthquake in southern Japan. Ryoto Mimaki felt the quake in the city of Kumamoto.
The initial shock was, I think, about 2 minutes or something, and it was quite big. I've never experienced that big earthquake, so I was not being able to stand still, so I was in holding rail or something.
The US president has been hosting world leaders in the White House before the funeral of Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. Donald Trump met Volodymyr Zelensky for discussions that the Ukrainian leader says were about license agreements for Patriot interceptor missiles. Mr. Trump separately met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for talks described as positive and productive by the White House. Speedboat killer Jack Shepherd's pleaded guilty to assaulting his current girlfriend and attacking her with a set of barbecue tongs. The assault last year led to the 38-year-old being recalled to prison. He was jailed for 6 years over the death of Charlotte Brown in 2015, who was thrown from his speedboat while they were on a first date. And European football's governing bodies hit out at FIFA plans to set up a private company to run its competitions, like the World Cup. UEFA says the sport's soul and governance aren't assets to trade, especially with zero transparency as to who'll gain financially. In the city, the FTSE 100 is closed up 89 points at 10,871. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. LBC weather: showers across much of the north tonight. Further south, it will be mainly dry and clear, with some drizzle reaching some western areas later. A low of 10 degrees. Showers clearing southern and eastern areas tomorrow, but otherwise hot and sunny with the odd shower in the far west and a high of 35 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
6 minutes past 9. A very good evening to you. Let's return to a subject that we covered a little bit in the first 2 hours of the programme, but we're going to devote the whole hour to this, and that is the subject of technical education. This is what the Prime Minister said this morning about the attitudes which young people who want to study to learn a trade rather than do a degree face.
I hear wherever I go that young people are often looking for something different from education. We've had a system built for too long around the university route, and it sends a message to some young people that they're some kind of second-class citizens. And it's just not right. They need an education system that works for them as well, that offers a path to all young people, that's balanced between academic and technical.
And he's absolutely right, isn't he? Let's face it. And whatever your politics are, can we not all agree that Andy Burnham on this is absolutely bang on? And our education system has been skewed far too far, not just in recent years, but I would say going back decades, to the ambition to go to university. Now, it is a laudable ambition for anyone to want to go to university. But I think most people who are listening now will probably think that this arbitrary target of 50% of 18-year-olds going to university, which Tony Blair adopted, was never right. And yet successive governments since Tony Blair have done absolutely nothing about it because they're scared of what the backlash might be from a certain group of voters who are going to think, well, if you make it more difficult to go to university, is that the right thing to do? I don't think you should make it more difficult to go to university, but what you should do is emphasise that university is not the be-all and end-all. There are other routes to being very successful in life. Technical education is one of those. Vocational education is another. And yet they've been paid lip service to, basically, over the past 2 or 3 decades. And various governments, Boris Johnson introduced T-levels, technical levels, in 2020. But they've kind of, are they really a big thing? Keir Starmer has introduced V-levels, which is, I think, coming in next year. So, it's not as if nothing has been done. But I think the way Andy Burnham described it there was absolutely accurate. And he sort of says that a lot of people think that if you don't go to university, you're somehow a second-class citizen. And if you tell an 18-year-old, then becomes a failure in life because they've been told that they're already a failure. That's obviously not going to happen to everybody. But I think it's an absolute travesty to make anyone think that just because they haven't gone to university, that they're somehow a failure or thick. We all know that everybody has a different talent. It's very rare that you find anyone that hasn't got some sort of talent. And surely the job of the education system is to unlock that talent, whatever it is, whether it is in an academic subject or a technical subject or something that is just a little bit unusual. That is the role of a school, of teachers, to find out what each individual pupil can excel at. And maybe they don't even know it at that time. It has to be brought out of them. And this sense of being a second-class citizen and of there being a stigma towards certain jobs, this was on display last week in an episode of Love Island, would you believe? No, I didn't watch it. I have people to do that for me. The largest of this, the target of this comment is another one of the women in the group, not the man who responds to it.
I don't care, it's cringy. Go back to the National Rail. Alicia, you work on the National Rail. Why are you sitting in after time?
Nothing wrong working on the National Rail, right?
So somebody who works for the railways is considered not good enough to go on Love Island. Have you ever heard anything so preposterous? Now, in the end, the woman who made that comment apologised for job shaming. Job shaming? Seriously, is that a thing now? That's actually a phrase, job shaming? Well, I suppose I can understand why. So the question for this hour is, are you in a job that you think people look down on you for being in it? And how does that make you feel? And have you got to the age of 18 at school, you've decided, no, I'm not going to apply to go to university, it's not right for me, not necessarily because you think you're not clever enough to do it, you just don't want to do it, and then you're made to feel a failure. It's an odd question to ask in a phone-in, how does it feel to be seen as a failure at the age of 18? But I think so many 18-year-olds are made to feel that way, and we shouldn't have a system that enables that to happen, should we? And what do you think about Andy Burnham's proposals, albeit they're kind of thin? We don't know exactly what he's going to do, but I think the aim is there. So we want to see the meat on the bone over the next few weeks and months as to exactly how things are going to change, because this is not something you can do overnight. You can't just introduce a new system tomorrow and expect it to work. You've got to recruit. If you're going to increase technical education from the age of 14 in every school in the country, well, that means you're going to have to recruit a lot of teachers who can teach about AI. I mean, how many people are actually able to do that at the moment? I mean, if you know a lot about AI, presumably you're in that sector anyway, and you're probably not going to think, oh, I'll be a teacher. I don't know. You tell me. 0345 6060 973. Steve Moss joins us, a plumber who retrained after working in corporate jobs for 35 years. Now, Steve, you came into the studio a good few months ago now, and we had a chat about this. But when you heard what Andy Burnham said today, were you sort of cheering him on?
Yeah, I found myself in this sort of slightly odd situation in being simultaneously very enthusiastic and very positive about what he was talking about, but also not entirely sure what the problem he's trying to solve is. Now, let's be clear. There's a lot of contenders for that title. There's a lot of problems that need to be solved. But is this about reducing the number of people who are in this NEETs, not in education training category? Is it about providing the skills that we're going to need as a country? Is it about addressing, the funding crisis in higher education? Now, all of those are definitely problems worth solving, but if we sort of look at this and think, oh well, it's a bit of everything, then I think that's something of a cop out. And absolutely, there'll be a spin-off benefit, but I think we need to be very clear on what it is that we're trying to achieve here.
But why have we, as a country, not really concentrated on technical education in a way that I know Germany, for example, has sort of for many, many decades? I mean, going back to the so-called economic miracle of the 1950s and 60s, they really did promote technical education as a really important thing, and we've never really done that.
No, I mean, as you said a moment ago, we've certainly had many prime ministers, many education secretaries who've talked about doing it and talked up technical education, trades, etc. But it hasn't really taken root. And I think part of the issue, and one of the things I like about what I've seen about the proposal so far, albeit as you say, it's fairly thin, is it does seem to address not just the education part, but what happens after education. Because what would be a crying shame would be if we put a lot of people through the educational side of, in my case, becoming a plumber, but then there weren't the apprenticeships, the career pathways after that. And I like the fact that this does seem to be being looked at as part of this proposal. Maybe in the past we've seen it purely as an education thing, and then people have hit the wall of, well, there's no opportunities after the end of that education.
Did you always know, even though you spent sort of 35 years in the corporate world, did you always know that you had an aptitude for doing something sort of a bit more manual?
I guess I had an interest in it. I was fortunate in that my dad used to do it as a spare time activity, so that makes it feel a little bit more real. But it was when I left corporate life, I was looking for a complete change, and I consider myself very lucky to have worked in the two very different environments that I have done.
And was there a time when you thought, "Oh my God, what have I done"?
No, not really. I spent a year at college doing the City and Guilds in plumbing, which I absolutely loved, and that was a real eye opener. Certainly talking about some of the things we talk about with the education system. I was like 56 when I went in there, so I'm probably not the target audience for Andy Burnham's proposal, but most of the other people on the course were. Now, I guess those were ones who'd made the decision to go into the technical side of things. So they whether they'd succeeded because of the system or in spite of it, I'm not sure. Obviously, what I wasn't seeing on the course was the people who had been put off by the idea of a trades career.
And do you think that people look at you in a different way now, or see you in a different way because you're now a plumber, not Mr. Corporate?
That's a really good question, and we talk about career stigmatizing and things like that. I've never, since I went into this second career, I've never had anything other than positive comments from people. I've never felt a stigma about it. But then maybe what we're guilty of in this country, and maybe Germany are a bit better than we are in this respect, is we do have a tendency to define people by the jobs that they do. And because for 35 years I was a corporate person, then I became someone who changed careers. Plumbing wasn't defining who I was. Maybe for someone younger going into it, it does become a bit more of that sort of typecasting.
We talked about the class system on the programme the other night, and I'm thinking, well, is that something that's at root here? Because plumbing would have always been seen as a working class job. But, I mean, I'm not going to ask you how much you earn from plumbing, but, I mean, as I understand it, plumbing can be quite lucrative nowadays in a way that it wasn't maybe 30 or 40 years ago. So you've gone from a job which everyone would have said was middle class to a job that people would have previously regarded as working class. But do you feel any change in your own attitude to things because of that?
No, I mean, I think every new experience you get gives you different perspectives. And, so certainly being a plumber has given me a different perspective. Now, some of that is from actually, doing the trade, from, lying under someone's sink and, seeing if I can work out why their tap's dripping. Some of it is from running my own business. Previously I was working for big organisations, and so the fact of being a sole trader and everything that goes with that, is an education in itself as well. But actually, as I say, my customers have been nothing but positive, and I've even had a few comments from people who are saying, "Oh, I'm a bit jealous. Actually, I'd have fancied that."
So I'm trying to think, while we're in our conversation, so what would I retrain as if I either wanted to or had to? And I can't think of any sort of manual trade that I think I'd actually be any good at. Maybe we'll throw that out as a text at 84850 if you think that would be... Because everything I've thought of doing, if I didn't do this, what would I be doing? I could teach. I could work for a charity. I've always fancied being a driver because I love driving. Not with me eyes at the moment, but anyway, I shall mull that over. Steve, it's always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. That's Steve Moss, a plumber who retrained after working in corporate jobs for 35 years. Maybe that's put the thought into your head. So generally, what do you think of what Andy Burnham has said today? Is it a good idea to introduce technical education at the age of 14? One or two of our guests and panellists in the last couple of hours have said they think that's far too early for people to make that kind of choice. I'm not sure I agree with that, because we do have to pick GCSEs at the age of 14. I don't think you can continue being a generalist much beyond 16, but everyone's got a different view on that. And do you feel that the job that you do has a certain stigma and that people look down on you for it in a way that maybe in some other countries they wouldn't? 0345 6060 973. It's 19 minutes past 9.
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m.
Andy Burnham says 14-year-olds will be allowed to pursue a more vocational education. He wants to make a hard hat just as respected as a graduation cap. But won't this be a disaster for social mobility and for aspiration? And therefore, isn't this plan from our new Prime Minister a pretty terrible one? Your calls on it all from 10 o'clock.
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Pick up more sun cream. Impromptu picnic. Late night cinema trip? Do more this summer. Hop on and off with the Weekend Hopper. Get unlimited weekend bus and tram journeys for £1.75 per day every Saturday and Sunday from the 25th of July. Plan your journey with the TfL Go app. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Offer valid from 4:30am on the 25th of July until 23:59 Monday the 31st of August. Always use the same card or device when touching in. For more information, search TfL Hopper.
Take summer by storm with Kia. Introducing the new Kia Sportage Storm, a unique limited edition of the UK's favourite family SUV. Test drive the award-winning Kia Sportage today and order yours by the 31st of August to get 5.9% APR representative and up to £3,000 PCP finance deposit contribution. Search Kia Take Summer by Storm. Kia. Movement that inspires. T's and C's apply. Kia Finance. To verify, visit kia.com/UK/favourite.
Chase gives you 2% cash back on your everyday spending.
Every day? Like Monday's train to work?
Yes.
Tuesday's big shop?
Yes again.
Wednesday's coffee treat?
Yes, cash back.
Thursday's lunch, Friday's brunch and Saturday's takeaway?
Yep, and yep.
Super.
Nothing on Sundays.
I take it easy.
Lovely. Enjoy 2% cash back on debit or credit card spending on groceries, restaurants, everyday transport and fuel. Search Chase Bank. 18 plus UK residents. Chase current and saver accounts required. Maximum £20 per month. Eligibility qualification. Exceptions and T's and C's apply.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
21 minutes past 9. During the break, I was thinking of professions that people do look down on. And I'm going to leave you to suggest what they might be. I mean, I've got a couple of ideas, but all of the ones that I've thought of actually are our society wouldn't be able to function without people who do these jobs, and yet society doesn't value them enough. Cleaners, for example. People look down on people who clean. Well, why? Because if they didn't clean in your office, if you work in an office, you wouldn't have a clean office, would you? So why would anyone look down on a cleaner? Why would anyone look down, for example, on what we used to call dustmen, now refuse collectors? Absolutely vital. I wouldn't want to do the job. Absolutely backbreaking. But we wouldn't be able to function if we didn't have refuse collectors in society. So why don't we value them more? People who do pest control. Again, a job I just couldn't even think of doing, and yet absolutely vital to the way we function. Surely we should value people in those kind of jobs just as much as we value the so-called sort of professional jobs, shouldn't we? Daniel's in Boreham Wood. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
I've had a job which people say they would love this job. Gosh, so wonderful, so fun. And yet when they meet you when you're in it, they then do look down on you in that job. And that job was working on a cruise ship in the entertainment team. And I started right at the bottom, worked my way up within the team, but it was always within entertainment. And it staggered me how many people who I do think secretly deep down would really have loved to have a job like that at some point also don't quite look at it eye for eye. They don't see you as equal. And I found it amusing because one of the things that we would do within that role is quizzes. And anybody
I do love a quiz.
Mm-hmm. Anybody who's been on a cruise knows that the quizzes are essentially a blood sport. and I remember having somebody really arguing with me over the most ridiculous point. He disagreed with the answer of a question. It definitely wasn't important. It was a cruise ship quiz, but that's by the by. He was arguing and arguing and arguing, and then he sort of spat out to me, "Oh, well, I guess you're going to tell me you went to Harvard then." And it did give me some small pleasure to turn around to him and say, with total honesty, "Oh, no, I can't tell you that, but I did go to Cambridge."
Cambridge Technical College, obviously.
No.
My dad went there.
University. Well, it's very good there. I did the student radio. We did as combined between the two.
Well, you see, I think that's really, because I wasn't expecting you to say a cruise ship entertainer when you told us what your job was. But I suppose, like in the entertainment industry, that there is a sort of ranking of what's considered proper and what's considered not. And I suppose cruise ship entertainer is sort of along the likes of being a holiday camp entertainer at Butlins or something, which I suspect anybody who does that has the most fantastic time. But there are all sorts of attitudes that people have for no apparent reason. It's just sort of gut reaction, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And to put it in with Butlins is spot on, because I remember getting advice from somebody, actually, when I was at university looking for what would I like to do. And they said, "Oh, do a season at Butlins. You'll have a wonderful time." I ended up not doing Butlins and did cruise ships instead, and really, really loved it.
But do people not say to you, "Mate, you went to Cambridge University and you're on cruise ships"? I mean, why?
All the time. And I think it's very fair to ask the why. It's unusual. I've only met one other Cambridge graduate who's done that, and I was there for 12 years in multiple different lines, and it is odd. I get that. But the thing that it really flagged for me is we're not our job title exclusively. And I loved my degree at Cambridge. It suited me well. I learned so much.
Sorry, have you mentioned what you did?
Oh, no. I studied politics, psychology, and sociology, which was what Ben Kentish did as well. He was in the year above me. And we do different things with a degree like that. Some people will go on and be a psychologist. great. We need those people.
So come on, dish the dirt. I want to know everything that Ben Kentish did at university that he wouldn't want me to know.
I don't believe there.
And he's listening now because he's about to go on air in half an hour, so he's listening to this. So come on, dish the dirt.
Well, he can correct me on this, but the thing that I think he did was I think he was the president of the society for our subject. He will have to correct me on that, but I do believe that he was the president of the PPS Society.
Well, he's a leader of people, isn't he? So but you see, president of a society means that he probably did some bad things, and I need you to tell me some bad things that he did.
My lips are sealed.
You're no fun, Daniel, honestly. And what do you do now?
So now I do a travel podcast because I thought, well, I've cruised around the world so much that I might as well do something with it that gives me a little bit more time at home as well.
Does that make money?
Not particularly.
You see, you sound like somebody who wants to enjoy their lives and isn't particularly concerned about money.
Yes, though I will say there's nothing quite like the stress of money. And I've had to very much regulate for that for myself over the last few years, because it ends up when, as a cruise director, that's the head of the department of the entertainment team on board. Entertainment is very central to a cruise experience. So if you get to a cruise director position, that's pretty well paid. But then you go from a pretty well paid job to saying, do you know what? I'm going to call that in. I'm going to try and set something up at home. I don't have anything to walk into, so I'm going to create something for myself. And whenever you create something for yourself, there is that risk that it's not going to take off as quickly as you think it's going to take off. And so you've got to have a bit of an appetite for risk.
Well, my podcast partner, Tessa Dunlop, she went on a cruise around the Mediterranean a couple of weeks ago, and she was the entertainment, well, part of the entertainment. She would do lectures on sort of historical things, and she had, the theatre was absolutely rammed full. She had an absolutely wonderful time, and my agent keeps saying to me, I can get you on the cruise ships. And I'm not very good on the sea, so I haven't done it yet, but possibly in the future I might try my hand at it too.
I recommend it. And so long as you don't go between Australia and New Zealand, you'll be fine for the sea.
Oh, what's wrong with that?
That is the roughest sea I've ever done. Oh, my gosh. There are beautiful places either side of that sea, but whoever put that sea in the way of them don't like sailors.
I'm thinking more Caribbean islands when it's very hot.
Yeah.
Where there's no, as long as there's no hurricanes or anything like that, I should be okay. But anyway... that's possibly going to wait a few years because you can't really do that while you're on the radio. Daniel, what a great call. I shall give your regards to Ben Kentish when I hand over to him. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we'll take more of your calls in a moment. Got slightly sidetracked on that call with a few anecdotes, but that's what you can do at the 9 o'clock hour, isn't it? So we want to know what you think about this idea of Andy Burnham to increase the importance of technical education, particularly for people as young as 14. Do you think that, in theory, is a good thing? It's not going to be introduced quickly, though, is it? It's obviously going to take a few years to be introduced. And also, what about the stigma of some jobs, that even in 2026, there are some people who view some jobs as very much inferior to others, and they're not shy in showing it? I think that's a bit of a disgrace, don't you? It's 9:30, news headlines on LBC with Katie Dartford.
The Prime Minister's announced a major shake-up of schools to get more young people into work. From 2028, 14-year-olds in England will be able to combine technical and academic subjects. The government's also introduced bursaries to help some universal credit families support teenagers into apprenticeships. The next 24 hours will be critical for the continuing wildfires in Spain and France. A new heatwave is on the way, which could bring temperatures of 40 degrees. And former Top Gear presenter Richard Hammond's been fined £999 after being caught speeding twice in the space of 3 weeks. It happened in Herefordshire last December. LBC weather: showers across much of the north tonight. Further south, it will be mainly dry and clear, with some drizzle reaching some western areas later. A low overnight of 10 degrees.
This is LBC.
Pick up more sun cream. Impromptu picnic. Late night cinema trip. Do more this summer, hop on and off with the Weekend Hopper. Get unlimited weekend bus and tram journeys for £1.75 per day every Saturday and Sunday from the 25th of July. Plan your journey with the TfL Go app. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Offer valid from 4:30am on the 25th of July until 23:59 Monday the 31st of August. Always use the same card or device when touching in. For more information, search TfL Hopper.
Ever notice how some things are just standard? Traffic on the M4, standard. Meetings that could have been an email, standard. But at Aon, our cars are driving the new standard. The new Aon V has rapid charging, standard. Panoramic glass roof, standard. 8 years servicing, 8 years MOT, 8 years roadside assistance, and up to 8 years warranty. Also standard, thanks to our Great 8 promise. Search Aon Auto to test drive today. T's and C's apply.
Honestly, I've been putting MTD off. First it was, I'll do it after this job. Then, after some grouting. After sorting the back of the van. After fish fingers and peas. And then I thought, no, just get it done.
Get MTD done simply with Sage, for free. Just connect to your bank, we'll sort your transactions, then submit your update to HMRC. Search Sage MTD.
Iain Dale, text 84850. This is LBC.
9:33 on LBC. We're talking about stigmas in jobs and whether technical education should be introduced. I say introduced in schools. I mean, there is a degree of technical education in many schools, but Andy Burnham wants it to be the importance to be increased, particularly for 14 and aboves. Do you think that is a plausible thing? I think it is. It may cost some money, though. Where's that going to come from? Because that's always the question here, isn't it? Sort of the government wants to do something new. Inevitably, it's going to cost money. So we all ask, well, how's that going to be paid for? And so far, answer comes there, none. Right, Greg says, lorry driver, brackets, me, to supermarket warehouse staff bringing in the load for shelf stacking staff to put on the shelves so that shoppers, me again, can access the products to survive. If I was competing for the last pack of biscuits on the shelf against a sneering snob who thinks it got there by magic wand, I would get it, not them. I'm sure you would, Greg. Lorry driver, you see, I quite fancy being a lorry driver because I do like driving. But maybe not one of the bigger ones. I think I'd be a danger to everybody on the road if I drove one of those. Grace is in Ealing. Hello, Grace.
Hi. Well, first I'll say that anyone who wants to hear about all the interesting things that you've done in your career should buy your fantastic book.
Grace.
I haven't finished it yet, but it's very good.
What a lovely thing to say.
Well, no, it's very good. And I think that, the previous message talked about supplying our supermarkets, and I think that's just an incredibly important thing to do. And I don't think that anything got here by magic wand. I thought while I was studying science that it seemed that we were somehow designed, and so I came to believe that God has made us, and therefore we have value and worth irrespective of our achievements. And yet I'm feeling so ashamed of myself, something completely messed up in life in terms of careers. And it was absolutely the thing while I was growing up. I must be the same age as the last caller. Your guest before the break. It was just assumed that we had to go to university. That was just what one did. And apparently my particular ward in my borough is in the top 5 in the country for people going to university. I didn't go to private school or anything. It was just a thing, that's just what you do. And at the end of the day, it's not being of any use. So I feel I kind of did not make good use of my time.
Well, not of use yet, but you're not past it yet, Grace.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I'm feeling very, very frustrated with myself. I've finally got a very small role, which isn't anything to do with what I studied, and I'm desperately hoping to make progress. But the jobs market is a complete disaster in terms of when one gets told how many other applicants there were for something, it's usually in the hundreds. So I'm feeling very, very keen for the government to do a better job of making sure that people are connected with the roles that really need doing. And I think that people who are doing technical or hands-on jobs, particularly involved in food supply chains and things like that, and some of the things that you mentioned, like cleaning, those are so much more important than some of the things that people have esteemed in the past, in the sense that we really need some of those jobs. But I think that as human beings, we can have an instinct of wanting to look down on other people because it can avert our feeling of insecurity about ourselves. I feel that all of us, have made mistakes, and it's great to be able to be repentant of those things. But if we kind of look at other people and think, well, they're, less civilized than I am in some way, then that can kind of enable us to get away from that uncomfortable feeling of our own insecurity. And I feel like a lot of the prejudice that we have about not just jobs but other things is driven by that attitude of wanting to feel superior so that we can avoid addressing the flaws that we have in our own lives by looking down on others.
And also, it's not everybody that is desperate to get a better job with better money, and so not everyone has that kind of ambition. Some people are very happy doing the so-called typical 9-to-5 job, earning sort of enough, but they don't need a lot more. And I think those who we class as so-called high achievers sometimes have a difficulty in understanding that not everybody is motivated in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there are so many things that we forget about which are really necessary. For instance, there are people elsewhere in our world who are going down underground to get the minerals that we need in our devices, and they're brutally treated sometimes and underpaid, and yet all of the things that we do every day rely on that technology, and we can really just forget because we're so busy thinking about what we're doing ourselves. But the things that we do ourselves can make us feel proud of ourselves, and so we want to concentrate on how we can feel better about ourselves, and sometimes looking down on other people can be part of that.
Grace, thank you very much indeed. Paul says if we didn't have the people doing the jobs that are looked down upon, then society would fail. I worked as a dishwasher in a busy restaurant, and obviously people see the head chef as the most important part of the kitchen operation. But I see the kitchen like society. The kitchen washer is as important as the head chef. If you don't have clean plates, you don't have a business. Paul on the night shift. Well, you're absolutely right there. I mean, obviously, the chef would argue, well, without me, you wouldn't have the food to clean the plates from, which I suppose is an argument. And there's always a hierarchy in any job, in any profession. And I think a kitchen wouldn't work if all of the different component parts of the kitchen didn't work together, whether it's you're a dishwasher, whether you're on the waiting staff, whether you are the chef, whether you're the sous chef or assistant chef or whatever they're called. You all have a role to play, and if one bit of that cog falls apart, then the whole operation falls apart, doesn't it? Let's go to John in Kingston. I'm being very philosophical tonight, aren't I? Hello, John.
Good evening, Ian.
Evening.
Your conversation about education and people having jobs above or beneath. I worked with a chap from 68, 69, till about, for 10 years roughly, on building sites. He had been to St Albans Public School, the oldest public school in England. He'd done 2 degrees at Cambridge. He joined the Grenadier Guards at a commission, and when he left the Guards, he got a job in the Kenyan police in the Mau Mau, time of the Mau Mau, and he used to regale us with tales of how they'd go out in the bush hunting the terrorists. And I don't want to be, but it was nasty. They wouldn't take them all back; they'd just take the limbs back, bags of limbs would they take back. And he still kept his ceremonial dagger, the end of the rifle dagger. He kept that for his, had it to use to cut his wedding cake. But he ended up as a labourer on a building site. He couldn't settle down in marketing or management. And incredible worker. He had a heart rate of 44. He had to do an hour in the morning to get his heart rate up to 70. He could drink a bottle of whiskey every night and come to work the next morning and sweat it out. Anybody who worked in the building industry around Kingston or Surbiton in the 70s would know who I'm talking about.
A bottle of whiskey a night?
A bottle of whiskey a night and come to work the next morning and sweat it out.
Goodness me.
He could run, back in them days, you carried bricks up a ladder in a hood up a wooden pole ladder.
Yeah.
He could carry 1,000 bricks an hour up a ladder, not 5 foot, up to 8 foot, 10 foot height, 1,000 bricks an hour for 4 hours in the morning. He'd set a clock to measure himself. He wore a Savile Row suit to work. He designed and made his own clothes. He could make his own leather coats. He designed and made his own Christmas cards. Beautiful drawer. He studied Greek. He married a well-educated civil servant. Her father was a bank manager the chap's brother worked in the city. He was quite an important job in the city. And his wife's family was worked for Lloyd's Bank, and she was educated, but he just didn't fit in, and he was happy just working hard on building sites.
Well, you say everybody in Kingston and Surbiton will know who you mean. I think with that description, you're probably right.
I apologise. Anybody that worked in the construction industry would have known the chap's name. His first name was Paul. I won't say his second name, but his first name was Paul. And an incredible, nice chap. When I first knew him around 69, he was 40 years of age then. But his Savile Row suit then cost £300 in 1969.
Well, that would be, a couple of thousand now at least.
At least £2,000 today.
Yeah.
And he went to Germany. He learned to become a bricklayer. And he went to Germany when the tradesmen went over with the Wiedersehen pet crowd. He went off to Germany and never. I think he settled down there. He was married in this country and had a wife, no family, no children, and he lived in Surbiton.
Well, he sounds like a real character. Thank you.
I could tell you stories, but it wouldn't be broadcastable.
We better stop there, John. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Claire, who's a first-time caller in Lewisham. Hello, Claire.
Hello. I was just calling because I think one of the careers that has a real stigma around it is hairdressing, which I've done for 14 years. You get a lot of clients that the majority are fine, but you get a few clients that really look down on you. And you can tell they're real, people that work in the city, in top jobs, and they come in and they trust you with their hair, which is their crown, but then they can make comments that make you feel really silly for what you do or make you feel a bit stupid, and I don't understand why. We go to college and study for 3 years and they trust us to do their hair, but you get people that kind of make you feel stupid even when you're doing their hair at work.
How does that manifest itself? What do they do or say to make you feel that way?
It's just comments over the years like, "Oh, you look like a hairdresser," or,
What does that even mean?
Yeah, exactly. But you get the little funny look, and you get "Oh, did you not want to go to uni?" And I'm like, no. When I was at school, uni wasn't an option for me. And I went and done hair and built this career. But I think as well, one of the problems with my trade is the salary is poor in a lot of salons I've been in, and I think as well people know that, so they kind of know you're not earning a lot, and they kind of look at you and they just make assumptions.
I think that's probably true in most jobs. People make assumptions about, because there's all sorts of stereotypes. I nearly made a facetious comment to you when you said you were a hairdresser. I nearly asked you, going on holiday anywhere this year, because that's the stereotype that you think, oh, well, that's what all hairdressers ask their clients, just to make conversation. I know. But look, I'm sure people have stereotypes about this, what I do, but I think every job has certain expectations, and if somebody's a bit different from what they expect, they're surprised.
Yeah, true. I just think it's with kids if they go into this industry, I know they do it already. Some schools in year 10, I think when they're 14, 15, they can go and do it as a separate subject. There's not much as well invested in hairdressing itself to make kids want to go and do it. I just know through the young girls we hire, they kind of go do that because they think it's going to be easy at college. They come into the salon and it's not easy, but there's not much motivation in regards to the training now and the salary now. And I don't know how really anything's going to change in regards to that and to motivate kids to do that.
Claire, thank you very much indeed for your call. We'll come to more of your calls in a second. 9:47 on LBC.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Is Andy Burnham's plan to let 14-year-olds pursue a more vocational education a disaster for social mobility? Plus, why government penny pinching is threatening one of Britain's best scientific sites.
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Pick up more sun cream. Impromptu picnic. Late night cinema trip. Do more this summer, hop on and off with the Weekend Hopper. Get unlimited weekend bus and tram journeys for £1.75 per day every Saturday and Sunday from the 25th of July. Plan your journey with the TfL Go app. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Offer valid from 4:30am on the 25th of July until 23:59 Monday the 31st of August. Always use the same card or device when touching in. For more information, search TfL Hopper.
When your husband's got his heart set on making the doer upper open plan, enjoy every thudding second of it.
Yes!
Be a step ahead with Barclays Premier, with our exclusive mortgage rates. Barclays, backing your future. Eligibility criteria apply. All mortgages are subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply. New Barclays mortgage applications only.
When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
Life feels better with a smile. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Modern, comfortable and affordable dentistry for all. See online for our price match promise. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling, keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk. From countryside escapes to seaside breaks, and plenty of open roads in between, there's a Mazda for every kind of summer. Get 0% APR on selected models when ordered by the 30th of September, and keep your mind on the really important stuff, like trying to eat that ice cream before it melts. Search Mazda. Available on PCP when financed by Mazda Financial Services by the 31st of December 2026. Indemnities may be required. Terms apply. See website.
Iain Dale on LBC. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
9:49. Here's a text from... doesn't say. Please do put your names on texts. While I agree about Mr. Burnham's promotion of technical education, I really believe there is an easier answer. Apprenticeships. My wife and I were both apprentices and have done very well for ourselves. I've managed over 300 people, my wife more. The day I started, there was a class of 12. 4 have gone on to be directors of companies. The issue is my daughter wants to do an apprenticeship, but there are very few and far between nowadays because it's too expensive for employers to bring in young people as apprentices, minimum wage, NI, and so on. That's the issue. Well, I think it's about time we got my friend Jackie Smith back in the studio to do a phone-in, because she is the Minister for Skills and Apprenticeships and presumably technical education. So she will have a lot to say about this. She's getting married on Saturday. I'm going to the wedding. So I'll mention it during a dance when we're both dancing to Dancing Queen or something ridiculous like that. Shall I? Maybe not. Maybe that wouldn't be the time and the place. Right, let's go to another call. It's from Linda in Hackney. Hello, Linda.
Oh, hello. This is right up my street because similar to this, I agree with what Andy Burnham's doing, because I started out at 14 myself as a Saturday girl in a job that I loved. I absolutely adored my job. It's not the job for everybody. People are going to be a bit squirmish. I was training to be a dental nurse, and back in the 1960s, and my first job, the one that I liked the most out of it, was when the men walked on the moon. That was when I started work, so it was a big milestone in my life.
July 1969.
Pardon?
July 1969.
Yeah, I was 14, and I started out as a Saturday girl, and I ran 2 surgeries. I helped the dentist with all the dental work, like crowns and bridges, tooth straightening, denture work. It was hard work, but I loved it. And I wish I was still doing it now, but I'm 73 and retired, and I'm missing all the... It was quite a laugh as well, on the quiet as well,
What? I don't think you'll be able to do it now, even if you weren't 73, Linda, because all dental nurses in my...
You're on your feet 9 till 5 or 9 till 6.
No, that wasn't the reason.
You couldn't walk out at 6 o'clock because if someone had a broken tooth or whatever, you had to stay till it was all done properly and stuff,
But I think most dental nurses nowadays come from Australia or New Zealand, don't they? Certainly my experience and my dentist.
I can do the Scottish one, okay, the new Jimmy, but... but I turn everything into a joke because that's how it is now,
Linda, you've entertained us. Thank you very much. Michael's in Dover. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Ian. Always enjoy a programme, no more so than tonight. The debate is absolutely brilliant. If you ever get a chance to drive HGV, go and do it. It's absolutely brilliant. Driving around London yesterday.
Do you still have to do a double clutch?
No. I'm driving a Volvo tonight, and literally, once you get up to 9 miles an hour, put cruise control on. It registers the speed of the road that you're on, and it controls the speed of the lorry. It detects you're approaching a roundabout, and it slows you down and presents you at around about 12 miles an hour. If nothing's coming around, you just steer around the roundabout, and it accelerates away again.
Oh, no, I don't like... You see, I don't like that.
No, but the challenge is manoeuvring the lorry around through traffic in London or wherever you're doing. Tonight, it's just a straight run up the motorway to Peterborough in a loading bay. They'll unload me and I'll take it back down to Charing in Kent. But that wasn't the issue, really, I was going to mention. My mother and I will be over the moon with Andy Burnham's proposal. My mother's 95. We'd never been Labour supporters, never voted Labour. But I always remember when I was at secondary school, my mother said to me, she said all pupils ought to go out and into industry and business and commerce and have a look around, see what's around. Once they've been out and about and seen what's available and what opportunities there are, then go back to school and study for the qualifications you need for the job that you fancy doing. So it should be over the moon with this sort of proposal.
Do you think it will amount to something, though? Because it's very easy for politicians, particularly when they're new in the job, to say this, that and the other about all the things they want to do. And then 2 years later, you think, well, what happened to that announcement then?
Yeah, it all depends whether they're capable of breaking the mould. My brother-in-law works in a school. He's not a teacher, but if a child gets kicked out of a classroom because they're misbehaving, they go down to his room and they spend the rest of the lesson in his room. And so he deals with the naughty boys and girls. He had a guy that was regularly going down to his room. He's never an academic, never will be. But you talk to him about breeding game birds or stripping a shotgun, cleaning it and putting it back together. He was the guy to go to. And he's left school and he's working in the career that suits him best. Raising game birds and looking after shotguns and what have you. So not everyone's academic. And you said Lionel Blair then. Tony Blair.
I'm sure we can think of a similarity somehow.
Tony Blair was totally wrong in pushing so many people to go to university. And he's been proved wrong now as everyone's complaining about the outcome of university courses. But what I wanted to say was I spent 30 years on the railway before I came HGV driving. And I always remember I was mopping the waiting room floor one evening because someone had spilled a drink and the floor was sticky. So I was mopping it and there was 5 teenagers in there and they were laughing and scoffing. And it became apparent they're laughing at me. So I engaged in conversation with them and they weren't going to do my job, didn't pay enough. Well, how much do I get paid? They didn't have a clue. So I pointed out to them that this job that they were belying was the job that supplied me with a roof over my head. I drove a decent 4x4 car, for a reason to become apparent in a minute. I used to go skiing for 2 weeks. Last week of January, first week of February, used to go skiing for a fortnight. Didn't take summer holidays because I owned and flew my own hot air balloon. So I had a private pilot's license.
Oh, I remember you've told me about that before.
Told you, yeah. But these kids, they're totally devoid of the end game. They all want to go in at high-earning jobs, but they don't understand that all jobs have a value and a contribution. If I wasn't mopping that floor that night, they'd be walking around on a sticky floor, knee-deep in rubbish. And all my colleagues and what have you did the same, keep the station clean and tidy. They had a purpose and they had a value. Everyone has a value to contribute if they're prepared to contribute. It's no good sitting on the sidelines criticising or belittling people for what they do. Society only survives if everyone pulls in pretty much the same direction. No, it doesn't matter whether you're a bank manager, brain surgeon, or mopping the floor. You all contribute.
Well, some wise words, Michael. I agree with all of that, and thank you very much for phoning in. Helen says, what about mature students who want to upskill and change careers? To do an apprenticeship when they're supposed to be open to all, not just young folk. There should be more money for further education establishments to help mature students. That's Helen in Lancashire. When I went to university, there were several mature students who became several of my best friends, actually. Here's another one from William, who says, I completely support giving vocational education the same status as university, but isn't there a contradiction here? If policies make traditional academic routes progressively harder to access while expanding technical pathways, don't you risk recreating a system where university increasingly becomes the preserve of the most advantaged, while everyone else is steered elsewhere? The real challenge is ensuring both routes are genuinely equal choices, not that one becomes the default because the other is less accessible. Again, wise words. Thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back tomorrow from 7. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Richard Spur. But right now, here's Ben Kentish. Ben, did you hear that call that I had?
Iain, I'll tell you all about my university escapades off air at some point. Thank you very much, Iain. That's one for another day. Let me tell you that for nothing. Hello there, and a very, very good evening indeed. Welcome to Late Nights with Ben Kentish here on LBC. Coming up,
there are people in the benefit system, young people in their 20s, who have been, I would say, quite seriously let down.
Andy Burnham says he wants 14-year-olds to have the option of pursuing a more vocational education at school if they decide they want to. This part of his plan to make sure that he says a hard hat is just as valued as a graduation cap. And a lot of people seem to think that letting 14-year-olds step back from academia and focus on something more based on technology or mechanics or practical matters is a good thing. I am not at all convinced. But what about you? Is this a good idea from our new Prime Minister?
On your radio.